Hello everybody, happy Monday. I'm Amla Panobi, and today we're going to be reacting to yet another video from Jubilee, but this is a different type of Jubilee video. It is not their middle ground, it is their Spectrum episode, and your girl, your homegirl right here, is featured in the video, and it's basically on the topic of, do liberals and conservatives think the same? Are they more similar than you think? And today we're gonna watch that, and I'll give you all the tea, the background about the behind the scenes that you don't get to see when you're watching the cut that you get on Jubilee. Now, before we get into that, we got Taylor in Nashville.
Hey, I love how you're saying that with a literal cup of tea in front of you. That's great. Is this kind of meta for you, by the way, to be commenting on a video of yourself interacting with other people?
Guys, I absolutely hate it. I hate it. And when this video came out, I sent it in our company little Slack channel, and I'm like, guys, I cannot bring myself to watch this, but the comments look really nice. So here it is.
They always are, yeah.
I don't like watching myself ever. I don't like hearing myself. And if you guys have been watching the show, you know, for this video in particular, I was super hesitant about it being released because it didn't feel like with the format we could get like a fully encompassed conversation from what actually happened that day. But luckily, by virtue of having this show, I can fill in the blanks for you guys, tell you what was going on, and we are going to do exactly that. And I might be cringing at myself this entire time, but we're gonna hang out and do it anyways. Okay, let's watch.
There is a lot of infighting on the right that I think makes us look very bad. One thing about liberals, you guys really do stick together and you actually get work done, even when I don't agree with it.
From my perspective as a liberal, I sometimes see y'all sticking really hard together.
Same.
And y'all are like, no matter what, we're gonna vote red.
The far left and the far right are equally problematic.
Okay, let's let everybody walk over first.
1.
Okay, the far right and the far left are equally problematic. Before we get into that, let's talk about the cast of characters we have present on the episode. First of all, they were told us, wear a red, figure out your whole outfit. I came with my little red outfit. Let me tell you right now, I wore the wrong thing because it was so cold in this studio that I cannot even describe to you. Like, everybody was quaking, freezing. So bear that in mind as everybody's like moving around and trying to give you a coherent thought. It's freezing in here. And then, Destiny ends up showing up, which is very cool. I had no idea that he was going to be on the episode. And I immediately thought, oh, okay, this is going to be really cool, because I know for the most part, in hearing Destiny speak and having had him on my show, that we can find a lot of common ground in our discussion. So I was actually excited for that part of the process. Of course, we have a man dressed in drag. Super nice guy, by the way. And we show up to the studio and you're not allowed to talk to each other. So you're sitting in a waiting room, and of course you're like fighting the urge to like introduce yourself or to say hi or to just create like an amicable environment before everything starts. But everybody was extremely nice. Also, shout out to the conservative guy in the red button down who is, slaying the house down with his American flag high heels. I don't know if you can see that. High heels on my tippies. That is, I absolutely love that. Anyways, okay, into the prompt. Liberals, or the far left and the far right are equally problematic. I stepped on agree and not strongly agree, because you all know I think that the far left is far more problematic than the far right is, and I think it's represents a far larger group in society than the far right. I mean, you look at our systems and institutions, the media, college campuses and universities. I think if we have to choose a side that is dominating that and dominating it in a problematic fashion, I'm going towards the far left. This is not to say that the far right isn't problematic at all. It's just to say far smaller group, and we'll get into defining far right and having that conversation in just a bit. Taylor, anything?
Yeah, in principle, I would agree that the far right, far left would be equally problematic, but in practice and reality, to your point, the world that we live in is very much kind of dominated in terms of all of our institutions, in terms of who controls most of the discourse and the culture, and what kind of messaging gets in our films, what who's pulling the levers in big tech and what you're allowed to see on social media, et cetera. Almost every institution, academia, we could keep going, is kind of controlled by the left. And I would say like the far left has more sway over the moderate left than maybe the far right would have over the moderate right, or at least I would say the far right has less sway in society at large. I do think, though, and can acknowledge that the far right does have influence on the conservative side of the aisle. We see that with, we're nominating not great people to represent the right, and there's a lot of problems on the conservative side, so that should be acknowledged. But overall, I think I'd have to say that the far left is more problematic at this moment in time.
100%. And and bear in mind, right? Okay, this is going to be a 5-minute prompt. This entire shoot was like over 2 hours. I don't know exactly how long it was. So imagine all of that being condensed down to 5 minutes for this prompt. We'll get into what may or may not have been edited out, different conversations that were missed as well.
I've actually seen both sides. I'm a gay conservative, and I have seen the far right chastise me for my sexuality, and I've seen the far left chastise me for being conservative. I've had my own address put on the freeway here in Los Angeles because they feel that my voice should not be out there. So I see the two sides actively doing harm to those of us in the middle who have a really rational voice and want to express ourselves in a safe way.
I appreciate the anecdotal experience that you had, but I think my issue saying that liberals are more problematic, I think everyone is.
What I talk about in my anecdotal incident is where I have never had a conservative physically attack me on the streets for what I am or who I am. They may verbally attack me. I've got that from the left too, but the left has physical attacks on my physical being out on the streets because I'm expressing myself.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to quantify and give all the examples that are necessary to sort of make your case here. But I do think there is an element of maybe, disproportionate violence when it comes to the far left compared to the far right. And off the top of my head, I can think of things like Antifa, creating riots and committing acts of violence against people. I could think of Posey Parker and Riley Gaines going to different campuses or events. And, I think Posey Parker had tomato juice, thrown on her and people assaulting her. Riley Gaines was punched in the face, I believe, in San Francisco. I think of the BLM riots in 2020 that, was a period of 6 months of a ton of violence, vandalism, fires being set. And for that in particular, I don't know that I can think of a right-wing equivalent. I know some will say January 6th. Even if you view January 6th as being this horrible day full of violence, mind you, those BLM riots were, 6 months, an extended period of time where nothing but egregious acts of violence were being committed against our fellow citizens. So you guys let me know. Give me right-wing examples of violence happening. I think maybe some would say Charlottesville, and I believe there was some sort of left-wing parade or gathering that a guy blew through with his car, correct? You guys can let me know in the comments down below. Taylor, were you going to say something?
I was going to say Charlottesville and January 6th. So you used the two examples that I got. But yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, no surprise there that it does seem like when there is a right-wing instance of violence or one that can be characterized that way, you get almost as many cameras from the media at that Charlottesville event or January 6th. And then the coverage is extended and sort of just you get this massive deal being portrayed that way. And then you get the stereotypical guy on CNN saying, we're having a mostly peaceful protest when there's a building on fire behind him. So there does seem to be some disproportionality there, but I don't know, maybe I'm biased.
And we'll definitely get into media representation. That will be one of the prompts on today's video.
So I mean,
multiple.
The opposite for myself. So experiences, as I said, anecdotal,
right.
Your experience, completely valid, but to say, oh, liberals are worse.
Right. Well, it's not that there's no one worse, which is why I didn't move to strongly agree. My anecdotal experience tells me that there is a group of people on both sides that will do active harm to someone who steps out of their expected narrative?
I feel like when we talk about political extremes, I think one, there is a lack of desire for bipartisanship. The second thing is this kind of like playful attachment to facts. People on the far left and the far right, whether we're talking about Israel-Palestine or vaccines, people seem to have like very fun activities in terms of just completely making stuff up regarding these two things. And then the third thing is the demonization of political opponents, where people on the far left and the far right engage in this idea that the people on the opposite side of the aisle, they're not just different or have different ideas, they actually hate the country, they want to destroy us.
You know, people get labeled as extremists just for being even pretty centrist. Based on our small conversation we've already had here, I don't think anyone here is extreme.
No.
But going down the street, you might get labeled, you know, crazy leftist or racist or.
I had to take his shirt off, for real.
It's interesting because when answering this prompt, I sort of hesitated. I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I used to be what I would characterize as a radical leftist. Now I'm sort of right of center. And I feel like I get characterized as a far-right extremist quite a bit. So I was thinking, what does far-right even mean? Because so many people who I deem to be reasonable are characterized as far-right, and I'm sure people on the left feel that very same way. I've gone and spoken to different campuses, both as a leftist and as a right-of-center individual, and I've never received more hatred or people trying to cancel my events than coming to those campuses as a conservative speaker.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that for a
Do
second.
the applause. She ate and left no crumb.
She ate. Oh my gosh. I can't watch myself, guys. Which, by the way, thank you guys for being so kind in the comments. If there's anything that set my mind at ease, I went through and like read the comments on this video and everybody was so kind. So I really appreciate that. What I can say is there's a lot of, anecdotal information being, tossed around, which they do encourage for the Spectrum. For the Spectrum video and for this sort of series, you're encouraged to, share your own personal stories. And I will say, having been on the left and having been on the right, the experience was by far disproportionate when it came to the hatred that I received for having come out of the closet as conservative. Like that, it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. The amount of, racial animosity, ideological animosity, and, attempts to get events canceled or to stop me from being able to speak was wholly disproportionate in having been on the right. And that seems to be consistent with other, conservative speakers or speakers who challenge the general left-leaning narratives and ideologies of today, whereas you don't see that for left-leaning speakers who are attempting to be on certain campuses. You might get a protest from right-wing students, or you might have right-wing students in attendance who are there to call you out on some of the things that you're saying, but very rarely do you see people attempting to cancel a liberal or left-leaning speaker.
Well, do you think that's because some of that rhetoric causes a lot of harm on the right side? Like a lot of the things that are being said maybe in those talks can have lasting impacts on those students when you're on those campuses. So and in the other way, the conservative students might not care as much about, progress is being talked about. I think there's
perfect example.
Okay, so my response was cut from this, which I'll get into right now. So the question was posed by Angel. Well, doesn't seem like your rhetoric is harmful, and maybe that's why you have the disproportionate response from students. My initial response to that was, well, who gets to define what harm is? There are plenty of conservative thinkers, speakers, students who would view a left-leaning speaker coming onto a campus and endorsing children being able to transition as harmful. It is harmful rhetoric. It can go on to convince people to commit acts of harm against themselves. However, you still don't see conservative students and thinkers showing up to these speeches in an attempt to get them canceled and to silence the speaker. And it's I think a very clear and distinct difference in philosophical thought when it comes to the idea of free speech. Conservatives believe that even those that they disagree with should be able to speak by and large. Of course, there are exceptions to that general rule, but that's what we believe. On the left, you don't have that same reverence for everybody's ability to be able to speak freely and to share their beliefs. And we see this all over. So I wish that response was left in, of course, but we have to cut down the video, and I understand why. To get a broad swath of everybody's opinions, it had to be cut for time.
Dylan Mulvaney just spoke at the University of Penn. They are free to go and have a talk. Conservatives didn't come out and try to cancel that event. Right. They didn't threaten staff. They didn't blockade the entrances. They let that event go on. Amala goes to speak, and there's rallies. They're pulling fire alarms. They're attacking the attendees. There is extremism.
I'm sure that there is, but I don't think Dylan Mulvaney is the right person to use for your example because of how much...
She's a leftist?
She's a leftist, but she's also had her life threatened on multiple occasions.
Right.
She's had to move around a lot because her address continuously is doxxed, and she wasn't even speaking at any sort of event. She was given a free Bud Light can, and her life was threatened.
I think so.
Sure, but you'd have to argue that that happens, disproportionate to conservatives who are, sharing their values on the internet. It is a pretty consistent experience just by virtue of being a public figure that you go through moments like this of, cancellation or people coming after you or being doxxed or having death threats sent to you. Somebody could just throw out, oh, what about J.K. Rowling? J.K. Rowling wasn't going around and giving speeches on college campuses about trans rights or preserving biological women's rights in their spaces, yet she's been doxxed and sent death threats, and people have, attempted to come to her house in order to threaten her. You have to, you have to admit that it's happening in both directions.
What do you think about, real quick, they showed you kind of nodding whenever she was making her point, and now you just made a point kind of in rebuttal there. Was that another thing that was cut, or is that just kind of like weird editing that made it look like you were agreeing with her?
I mean, I'm just nodding in the fact that I can understand the example that's being made, and maybe that insinuates that I'm agreeing with her on the point that she's making.
When that's all they leave in, it kind of leaves that impression.
It's kind of difficult. But again, this prompt, we probably talked about this prompt for like 20 minutes. So how much of that 20 minutes do you get to see? 5. And I guess it can make things look a little bit more congruent than they actually are, but that's okay.
Keep in mind, given the entirety of the show actually, is when we talk about like canceling or attacking people, the reality is if you have the power to do it, you will do it. And on college campuses, the prevailing thought right now is generally progressivism. So if they can cancel or if they can bully conservative speakers off campus, they'll do that. But then right now, because conservatives don't have power on college campuses or in some forms of media, they'll say, well, the left is pro-cancel culture.
But it's interesting because this wasn't happening before on college campuses. And suddenly you have, decades of left-leaning indoctrination and teaching, and it becomes a problem on college campuses. I can't think of like a time period where we were dealing with this level of animosity on a university campus where you just could not host healthy debates or have speakers of differing political views come onto a campus. So I'm hesitant to believe that the very same would be happening if conservatives were in power. And, students have the ability to speak up. They just don't because they feel that sense of like impending doom. If I share my conservative beliefs, something's going to happen to me or I'm going to fail. And I don't know that was happening in the other direction before, or that we have examples of that being the case.
Right. Like he's drawing an equivalence there that would be true in theory, kind of like I said at the beginning, the far right and far left are equally problematic in principle, but in practice, we've not seen that. And I think the same would hold true in the example that he gives. We've never seen a university that is dominated by the far right, at least that I would know of. And I think that's something that distinguishes you as far left or far right is when you become illiberal in the sense of like classical liberalism, where you no longer are adhering to liberal values like free speech, good faith debate, rational debate, and civil discourse and truth seeking. Like those are liberal principles that should be respected in theory by the right and left, and that historically were, especially in a university setting. But now when you have a university system that is dominated by the far left, that they're actually the illiberal left, and they're no longer interested in the good faith debate. They think that threatening ideas are a form of violence, speech can be a form of violence, etc. And they're no longer protective of free speech and don't have that a priori commitment to those shared principles that make a truth-seeking sort of enlightenment institution possible and thrive and actually foster education. And so it's an equivalence that he's making that's true in theory, but I don't think it's true in practice and in reality.
Right. And this is not to say that there are no conservatives who would go and try to cancel a debate
Right.
if they had the power to. I'm sure there are conservatives who would do exactly that. It's just to say if you are standing on your actual principles, you would have a problem with that. And I would personally have a problem with a conservative willing to do that.
No offense to conservatives, you don't get credit for saying, well, we didn't try to cancel something on college campus. Yeah, that's because there's like 10 of you. You couldn't do it even if you wanted to. Right? Like, obviously you're not doing it, right?
I think there's way more conservative students than I think people actually give credit to, but maybe they feel like they need to, harbor those beliefs internally rather than, espouse them out loud. And I will say, any conservative who wants to shut down an event or a speech, I would wholly disagree with.
Okay, we got that in there. And I don't think there's 10 conservative students on university campuses. I think it does feel that way. And we do have to ask ourselves, why does it feel that way? And it's because on campus after campus after campus, conservative students are coming forward and saying, I don't feel comfortable sharing my actual beliefs. I can't do it when we're, having a Socratic conversation in class. I can't do it when I'm asked to write an essay about my personal beliefs. And I can't tell you how many conservative students I've met who say, I have to pretend that I am like, a liberal on a certain issue or left-leaning on a certain issue because I know it's going to affect my grade. I know it's going to affect my relationship with other students. And I don't feel comfortable saying what I truly think on our Harvard video. Harvard, one of the most elite institutions in the United States of America in terms of higher education, supposedly, over 50% of students say they don't feel comfortable saying what they truly think about an issue and that they feel like they are self-censoring. So are there really, 10 conservative students on every university campus? Or are university campuses, a true reflection of the population, which would mean about 50% of students feel similarly to the way that I do and the other conservatives in this video? We have to, ask these questions.
Real quick, we got a $50 super chat. So I'm going to read that from Loretta Jean. Came in, says, my take on the far left and far right is Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not... Maybe there's some sort of equal far right that's brewing right now in our society, but based on the different sectors of power and the left-leaning control of those sectors, I don't know that it's possible to have a far-right equivalent to what is happening right now, nor do I think a far-right equivalent to the far left that we have right now. I don't think that would be accepted by society. I don't think generally people are that welcoming or warm towards a far-right disposition when it comes to ideology. Like, I can't fathom it. And, so many people on the left say, oh, a fascist government is coming and we're coming back to like a far right totalitarianism. I don't think so, nor do I think anybody is like wishing for that or that would be accepted in the slightest by the general population.
Yeah, it's like, again, her point, Loretta's point, that of Newton's law, it's something that's true in principle or true in theory, but we're not really living in a reality of proportionality and equivalence anymore. We're living in an engineered reality. And a couple times when you're talking about the underrepresentation of students in university, of conservative students in university, my mind went to it's kind of nerdy or maybe difficult to wrap. It's still difficult for me to wrap my head around, but I try to listen to James Lindsay unpack some stuff like this for me. But basically in the 1960s was when a lot of these new ideas of postmodern neo-Marxism, the long march through the institutions, you can look this stuff up, really came to the fore. And the result of a lot of the ideas that were embraced at that time was the institutional capture of the universities that we're seeing today and of culture. That's what they call it, the long march of the institutions, basically taking over. And one of the marquee publications of the intellectuals in that movement was a guy named Herbert Marcuse, and he wrote an essay called Repressive Tolerance. And the idea was basically that it's okay to repress the other side and to be intolerant toward the other side when we do it, because essentially we're right, we're morally right, we're more enlightened, and those who don't get on board with our new progressive utopian vision of the way things ought to be need to be rooted out. And that is the logic in which they live, they being the people who now occupy the institutions that at the upper echelons of our society, including academia and mainstream media and elsewhere. So all that to say, like, we're not living in this equal playing field of reality where good faith ideas go head to head, and we're getting the best ideas competing and coming away with the truth. We are kind of living in a mental colonization, if you will, colonization of and where the way that they think has been imposed, and it's not this equal thing anymore. So it's kind of a difficult thing to convey and grasp, and I'm probably falling over myself trying to get it out. But I do think that there's a lot that it explains a lot of why there's so much asymmetry in our political landscape right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, maybe there's an equal and opposite reaction that is brewing somewhere, and we're going to see the pendulum swing back, in a far right direction. I don't want to be around for that. I'm going to be totally honest. I hope there's not an equal and opposite reaction here, because what's happening right now with the far left is not great, and I don't want to see whatever shape that takes on the far right.
There should not be limitations on free speech.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, I hate this prompt. Because we all agree that like direct calls to violence are not acceptable, I imagine.
Right.
We all agree like you can't scream fire in a theater. Otherwise, I think that like there should be Nazis on college campuses like doing their ideology. You should be allowed to say basically whatever rhetoric you want, as long as it's not like violating the terms of service of a platform. I do agree that vaccine misinformation is harmful. I do agree that misinformation relating to conspiracy theories is harmful, but I don't think the proper way to go about addressing that is to lock it all down and to ban it. I like the steps that YouTube has taken, where they might put a note under the video, or what Twitter, or the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, called X, is taking, where they have like the community note system.
I was thinking the very same thing as you. Of course, there are certain things that you cannot do, even with free speech being present. And I'm not sure how you define hate speech. So with some of the hate speech laws that are coming about, I think those need to be reevaluated and maybe rolled back, because even people who we disagree with or we don't like or we view as evil should still be able to espouse their beliefs.
Right. Yes, that's what I wanted to get through in this prompt. Okay, we can go over the fire in a crowded theater and the acts of violence against people, that those being called for. We all understand that under free speech, those things are not protected, which is, yes, why it was not the greatest prompt. But outside of that, are all these different limitations that we're putting on free speech valid? Not necessarily by saying, Twitter has every right as a platform to do whatever they want. We understand those arguments. We're talking about in principle, meaning that if you were running a platform like Twitter /X or Instagram or YouTube, what are the principles that you would implement? And me personally, I would allow for people to say what it is they truly think. People on the left, people on the right. Yes, people who are racist. That's fine. You want to say what you want to say? You say it. I would rather know that you are the racist in the room. I would rather know that you are the homophobe in the room, and we're going to get into that discussion. I don't think it makes sense at all to compel people's speech or to not allow for bad ideas to see the light of day. And I think, people will say that the best disinfectant for a stupid or bad idea is sunlight. Allow it to live out in the world where people can respond to it, and on forums like YouTube and on X or Twitter. Because if you never allow people the opportunity to say the ideas, we never get to contend with them. We never get to debate them. And instead, you have just a bunch of repressed bad ideas sitting inside of people. And you know what that happens when you repress things? A lot of times they just grow and fester and become so much worse. Or you'll find a pocket of the internet where you can say what you truly think, and you'll become radicalized in that direction, both left and right. It's just not healthy for, free thought and free discussion.
All right, for example, right now, what's going on with students on campus, I don't agree that Congress and other individuals should limit what students are talking about on campus, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Israel, with the crackdown on JVP, the crackdown on Students for Justice for Palestine. The people who are in power should understand that students are the most, I would say, abrasive when it comes to speaking out against injustices.
I'm a free speech absolutist. I think that there should be repercussions to certain free speech, but it's a constitutional right, and yeah, that's where I stand with it. I don't want any apps being banned. Right. I don't want people being banned from certain apps, and I think there's an attack on our First Amendment right now. Yeah.
So you think no one should be banned from platform?
Absolutely not.
So like someone calls me like the F slur, you like leave them?
Yeah.
Why?
I get called that
Because
all the
that's
time.
their right to say that. Now, you can, there should be measures taken to where, like I said, there are repercussions to certain speech. I don't think the platform should be able to remove them, but I think you should have the right to block them like we already can now, because I've lost 3 Instagram profiles just for saying, oh, I don't think children should have sex changes under the age of 18. Accounts gone. Like, I've lost thousands of followers and stuff for just saying things that I think are just common
I do have a
sense.
question for you, actually.
Yeah.
Because I can understand why, like, hearing a word like that is harmful, and it's not something that you want to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather know who's homophobic, though? Wouldn't you rather know who's racist?
Yeah.
These platforms,
See, we didn't really get an answer, and that got cut off.
Let her cook.
Let her cook, please.
I'm just remembering the things people were saying the first time you talked. I got her, which I didn't know was a thing, slay queen, which I have heard before, or work, and let her cook. I saw a lot of y'all in the chat, so you can keep saying those when Omelet drops truth bombs
Yeah,
on
you
these
know,
people.
I was able to on the day of, but it didn't quite make the final edit. And I don't know if they're gonna end up releasing like the full thing on Patreon. And I saw so many people in the comments like, I want to know what Angel's response was to her when asked, shouldn't you allow people? Don't you want to know who the homophobes are? I don't remember. I don't remember what the response was. I heard a little bit in the edit of Angel saying, yeah, but I don't know that the response was actually agreement on that. But anyways, I'll let the question stand, and you guys can answer down below. Wouldn't you guys want to know who are the people that have these ideas? Otherwise, you're just gonna be running around a world with a bunch of like secret racists and secret homophobes who like hate you, but on the down low, do you just want that to be happening? You know, if you are a racist or homophobic business owner or anything like that, please let me know. I don't want to come spend money at your shop and then you secretly hate me and I'm just like funding somebody who has horrible ideas. And you know what? When people can be open about those ideas, you can laugh at it. You can like tell them how stupid it actually is. And that forces people to actually confront themselves and confront the horrible things that they think. And that doesn't mean that every racist is going to change their mind or every homophobe is going to wake up and, you know, suddenly be accepting of gay people and all this. It's just to say, you know what? I don't need it to personally affect me how you think about people like me or people who are gay or people who are trans or, you know, fill in the blank. It's okay for you to have those beliefs, and I don't need to be like the overlord of everybody's thoughts and feelings on everything, because I sure as hell probably have beliefs that a lot of people don't agree with or, you know, wouldn't take too kindly to me, but I'm still gonna share them out loud and y'all can deal with it. And we're all gonna go about our days, and guess what? You're gonna be fine, you know? We can sit down and have the conversation, or you have every right to leave the conversation. I think with free speech also comes the freedom to not speak, also comes the freedom to remove yourself from a place where you don't wanna be, remove yourself from a conversation that you don't wanna be in. And where DeAndre said, you know what? I don't think I should be taken off the platform, but you should have every right to block me. Yeah, if I was gonna call somebody the F slur, I would hope that they would be able to block me so they don't have to deal with me being annoying and being rude. And that should be the extent of the right that you have on platforms like this if I were the one running them. Now, I understand that they're private businesses, that they have every right to do what they want to do, but I think for the best results in society, they should allow people to speak. Okay, let's continue.
have the right
Got it.
as private businesses to say what they want on those businesses. It's not cancel culture for them to take down slurs. And honestly, they're not that great at taking down slurs anyway. Because I get called a on a daily basis online just for being a Jewish person.
The unfortunate thing is this internet and social media has become the town square. And the town square, if you were to take a box and put it in the town square, there is no limit on what you can say. And who's to say the city's gonna come down and say, you use the word and we're gonna take your soapbox and you can't ever come back to my city? That's exactly what you're doing when you're saying the platform has every right to remove this language.
You have the option to go to another platform. There's plenty of
So we have an option to go to another city then.
There's plenty of conservative platforms
Now
that
you have no free speech.
you have free speech because you have so many options.
I think we have to be.
See, it's just like, I can understand where she's coming from in the argument that she's making, and technically it is true. Private businesses have every right to not engage with certain people that they don't want to engage with or to take them off their platform. The argument is whether or not that is right or correct or something that you would do. Of course, if given the opportunity, it sounds like she would stop people from being able to call her certain things, or she would stop people who are right-leaning from being able to speak openly on platforms. What we're challenging is whether or not that is right. And it's not right to, section people off into ideological echo chambers where if you want to be on the internet, you can only go on a conservative platform and talk to other conservatives. And if anything, do you know what that will turn into for the left? A nightmare. This is what happens, right? If you are cut off from the general society and the general public square, as Mario's making the point, and you're forced to go on just another conservative platform to talk to other conservatives, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to foster an environment that is full of animosity between the two sides, and each side is going to radicalize each other, right? We're just going to keep revving it up, and there will be nobody there to challenge the conservatives that are being radicalized. There will be nobody there to challenge the left-leaning people who are being radicalized. So you're just fostering an environment of hate, and guess what? Where the two sides may not clash on the internet because they're forced to be sectioned off into different apps, we're going to clash in the real world where we do have to speak to one another and we do have to have these conversations, and where we have this pseudo violence of, oh my gosh, your speech is so violent towards me. You're going to get real violence in the real world where we're all forced to go to school together or the grocery store together or to have conversations about like public policy or legislation that's being passed. And if you think just like pushing people off to the side and making them speak to one another is going to solve the problem, I think you're in for a very rude awakening.
Yeah, and just to underscore the point about the unequal playing field, I'm old enough to remember a couple of years ago, we had debates like this, and the conservatives did go off and make their own platform. It was called Parler, and within a few months, it was growing rapidly. I remember we were with PragerU at the time, and like that account we made was getting so many followers and great distribution. It was like an exploding social platform. And then because Apple and Google had issues with the fact that free speech was allowed on the platform, they didn't like the terms of service or the way that speech was being enforced on those on Parler, they removed it from their app stores, and that effectively killed it. And then they just were like, okay, we'll just be on the web. And then Amazon, which controls AWS, which is how websites are hosted on the internet, removed Parler's ability to even be online and have a website. So that's just yet another example of a lot of these things sound nice in theory, like, oh, you guys can just go over there. But the reality that we live in is not that equal playing field. But even so, to your point, we have to hold in tension the rights of companies to use their private company, use their platform how they see fit and censor who they want to censor, with the rights of the users who are being censored. And it's more about the principle of the matter than whether on paper they're allowed to do this. Is if you are acting, if your platform's acting as a forum, as a place that hosts public discourse in the United States, in the world at large, then the spirit of that ought to carry with it the principle of free speech and the desire to protect that and the desire to foster an environment where people are free to share their ideas, even if they're ideas that are unpopular, ideas that can be targeted or disagreed with or whatever. It's not following the principle and the spirit of free speech to censor people that you disagree with as a platform, or to take a side, or to set yourself up as the arbiter of what constitutes hate speech or what constitutes permissible speech on the platform. That's where I do, to Destiny's point, like the idea of community notes. At least that democratizes it a little bit. But you don't want a situation where you're set up as the arbiter. And I think the Constitution and the centuries now of case law that we have around how free speech is governed ought to be deferred to by these companies, and taken. You're better off following that model than all of a sudden you setting. Remember when we had like a misinformation czar a couple years ago with COVID that was instituted with the government? Like that, all that is a path to like division and resentment and foster. People. If you don't allow people to speak, they're just going to fester, and they're gonna develop more hateful and radicalized opinions. And that's definitely the direction that society has gone in. And I do think I've seen a lot that we'll look back in history and see what Elon Musk did with buying Twitter and making it and platform where free speech is allowed is going to be something that really changed this moment in this time in history, and I think that's a good thing. So,
yeah.
No.
There's also no regard here for how large companies can become and how often corporations have way more control than they should be able to have. Like, imagine saying, oh, well, BlackRock can do whatever it wants because it's a company that gets to control whether or not you are able to patronize their businesses. Do you know how much they own and how much they're like how capable they are of completely ruining somebody's life? It reminds me of this guy who had, I believe, an Amazon smart home, and somebody had brought a delivery to his house and complained that he was being racist or some sort of hateful rhetoric was thrown at them as the delivery person. And then Amazon turns off his smart house. Can you imagine the amount of power these corporations would have if we just went with the rule of, oh, well, they can do whatever they want because, they're a business and they get to decide, whether or not your life is affected by things you say on the internet or by your personal beliefs. It is very dangerous territory. And it just bewilders me that so often it is the left that is promoting that sort of idea, considering they used to be so anti-corporation and so anti-establishment, but now you are quite literally calling for corporations to have more power in our lives than they should ever have in the first place.
Really careful. When we talk about the concept of free speech, I like the concept of free speech, and I would defend that across multiple platforms, but that's fundamentally different than the First Amendment. The First Amendment has nothing to do with, the concept of free speech. Right. The First Amendment prohibits Congress or state or local governments from making laws specifically abridging your right to freedom of speech. Yes. Like, hate speech laws don't exist in the United States because there's not hate speech. Hate can be an aggravator to an existing crime, but we don't outlaw certain types of speech. Twitter does not have a legal obligation. It's a violation of their First Amendment right to say they have to host whatever type of speech or tweet that somebody has on the platform.
And a hate crime and a hate incident are two different things too. And I wanted to say, like, if somebody called you, the F word, and then they said they wanted to kill you, then that's a hate crime. Bingo. And that's not protected, right? Correct. But a hate incident, somebody could call you an F word and not say they want to kill you.
Can I share a hot take, by the way? Hate crimes
Please.
And hate speech, stupid. It needs to be gotten rid of. I never want to hear the word hate crime or hate speech ever again. What does that even mean? If I commit a crime against somebody and I punch Mario in the face because I dislike him, I'm going away for assault and battery. But if I say the F word that I punch Mario in the face, I get assault and battery plus a hate crime. What does it matter what the crime is motivated by? What matters is that the crime was committed, and that should be equal regardless of the reason why you punch somebody in the face. It's so ridiculous when I see people go to prison and it's like, oh, he's here for assault and battery and he's also here for a hate crime, and the hate crime tacks on 5 more. It's just so ridiculous to me. The very same for hate speech. Who is to define what hate speech is? Why is it that certain groups are protected under the guise of combating hate speech, but others aren't? And who is to say what's motivated by hate and what isn't? How we ever got down this road of punishing people for hate crime versus hate speech is just ridiculous to me. I know a lot of people won't agree with that, but damn, it makes no sense to me. A crime is a crime.
You, and that's still protected.
Exactly. It can be an aggravating circumstance to an existing crime, but you can call somebody whatever you want, and it's not,
I often criticize my own political party. 3, 2, 1.
There's plenty of criticism to be levied to both sides. I may criticize one a little bit more. We all know what that is, but yeah.
I see that you're on the disagree side.
I am.
What brought you there?
What brought me here is because I tend to be a more, I guess you could say, traditional conservative in that I don't like to speak ill of my own party. I just don't. For me to go out and air their dirty laundry out where everyone can see it is only going to put a blemish on them. And I always want to put my best foot forward, and I always want to put my party's best foot forward. But I will point out the instances where I disagree with them privately so that they can make the necessary changes.
I've got to ask, I'm so sorry, because you said you were a Trump supporter, right?
Yes.
This must be the thing you hate the most about him then, right? Because isn't Trump the most anti-Republican attack
But here's the thing, I come from a community where we found our power in local government. I've separated myself from this idea that I'm going to speak poorly about Trump because I want him to put his best foot forward.
I wish more liberals did that, to be honest. I think a lot of liberals, we tend to bash our party on the social media platforms, or when we protest a lot, right? But I think when it comes to going to these city council meetings, going to Congress, writing our elected officials, we tend to fall back on that, and we rely on social media, and we rely on demonstrations.
There is a lot of infighting on the right that I think makes us look very bad. One thing about liberals, you guys really do stick together, and you actually get work done, even.
I mean, I don't know. This is all. I think there's a lot of infighting on the left. There's a lot of infighting on the right. I don't let my feelings like motivate whether or not I criticize somebody. I just ask myself, do they deserve to be criticized for the thing that they're doing? And if you deserve to be criticized, it doesn't matter if you're a conservative or, liberal, you deserve criticism. And I think if we're going to like tiptoe around criticizing certain groups of people because they have the same label as we do, or, we criticize them more because they don't, that's when we get into tricky territory. The thing about principles is that they should be, levied evenly, hopefully, if you're doing, the right thing. But of course, we're going to let our own personal influences and biases affect the way that we criticize others. But for me, I'm like, I don't know why this is even really up for debate. If somebody deserves criticism, they deserve criticism. And I hope that if I deserve criticism, you give me the criticism. And then we move on from there.
Yeah, I think when you're thinking in terms of the power struggle and you're operating out of a desire only for my side to win, and that's more important to you than the truth winning or sticking to principles, then you're going to overlook hypocrisy or a lack of staying committed to first principles on your own side, and you're going to overemphasize the other things on the other side. So I think you need to be more committed to truth and principle than you need to be committed to winning necessarily. And I think in today's day and age, the more polarized we get, the more people more readily people dispense with their commitments to principles, and the more readily they act in bad faith and are willing to put up with compromise or hypocrisy on their own side, and the more ready they are to call out things on the other side and even mischaracterize it or go beyond evidence or whatever that may have you.
100%. You just got to be real, y'all.
And even when I don't agree with it, where it's the right, with people like us, I feel like they see gay Republicans or conservatives as useful idiots, to be honest. That's why I kind of take issue with saying that I'm a gay conservative or gay Republican. They don't try to cast a wide net to bring new people over, whereas liberals do.
From my perspective as a liberal, I sometimes see y'all sticking really hard together. Same. And y'all are like, no matter what, we're gonna vote red. Like, y'all seem very unified, even though you're talking about like public, like there's like internal discourse.
I think that's the case for just both political parties. I think for the most part, when somebody's going to vote, they pull out their ballot and they go, okay, D for Democrat, boom, 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 boom. R for Republican, boom, 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 boom. And then, we call it a day. And unfortunately, that's how people work these days.
But like, I feel like liberals feel like there's a lot of internal discourse amongst us. We're always yelling at each other.
Well, that's interesting because Democrats, they're winning a lot more elections right now. That's another critique I have of the Republican Party. The midterm elections, they completely blew it. They put out a lot of bad candidates. The left didn't do that. They put a lot
policies. It's like the right stays stuck on certain things, like abortion. It's like they're unbudging with that, and it's like, all right, if we're pro-life, let's be pro-life in and outside the womb. Because they only focus on abortion. But what about war? Because now they want to send everybody over to Israel. So I'm like,
violence should never be the answer to any issue. 3, 2, 1.
I think they edited out my response in this one, but it was essentially, I went to agree, because again, in principle, I agree that violence is never the answer. And, even when, forced to use violence in an act of self-defense, it's not the thing that we want to have to resort to. I only leave room for if somebody's violent towards me or comes at me, I'm gonna come back at you, okay? And I reserve the right to come back at you.
Hey there, it's Amala.
Hey, I'm Dustin. Or click the link. Functioning democracy.
Okay, now let's get back to it.
I mean, violence, assuming we have a functioning democracy, I think violence is bad for two huge reasons. One is because we don't want to condition people to feel like violence is the answer to political disagreements. And then two, we want people to we want everybody to be able to utilize some form of protest against the government. And when we endorse violence, we're now saying it's okay for even people we disagree with to use violence, and that can be really scary for a lot of different reasons. But I would say in general, general, and 99%. Where we're at today in the United States, we are not at the level of where violence is necessary to enact any kind of political change.
Which I'm so glad that he said that, because so often people on the left are calling for violence, 100%. They are extremely radicalized and rebellious when it comes to acts of violence, and we've watched that play out. We watched the type of things that they endorse. Again, I'm going to bring into question and analysis the 2020 BLM riots and how many left-leaning people were in support of that. Even those who didn't actively go out and riot would be like, oh, well, I understand why they're doing it, and it makes sense because violence has been committed against them. And it becomes super tricky when you blur the definition of violence, which the left actively does, where they say, oh, your speech is violence now. So now if speech is an act of violence, now I get to respond in kind, which means I can respond physically. I can respond by burning down buildings. I can respond by, stomping on police cars and doing, things of that nature. Your silence is also violence, right? So when you don't speak, you are complicit in an act of violence. So now do you get to respond in kind with physical violence? Would that be an act of self-defense, considering now my speech and my silence is now both being characterized as violence? It is very important that we use language in the way that it wasn't intended to be used, and that we don't fudge around with the definitions of things, which, my goodness, the left does quite a bit of these days, I gotta say.
I wouldn't say that's entirely true. I mean, there's a certain level of violence happening to marginalized communities.
You hear that?
That doesn't mean I necessarily agree with violence when it comes to the Palestinian rebellion that's been happening in Israel. I don't agree with Hamas killing people, that's terrorism. But at the same time, the violent uprisings that have happened, most of which have actually been peaceful, but still there is some sort of violence happening because they've been oppressed for so long. Back in the Holocaust, people think that, oh, Jews went peacefully into the concentration camps. No, we were violent. We had uprisings, we fought back. At a certain point, there is violence in fighting back to oppression.
Okay, now they cut a very, very important part of her response and things that she was saying. And I don't know if she had tacked it on to what she was saying there or it was later on in the prompt. But what she's saying sounds reasonable, right? Because she's saying, oh, well, yeah, during the Holocaust, thing is happening with the Palestinians in Gaza and Israel. And we can actively watch, violence that has been committed. We can see historically violence that has been committed. Now, she was a very nice girl. I just want to go ahead and preface that. But she started talking about, there's violence actively being committed towards indigenous people in the United States today. There's violence being committed towards black men and women in the United States today. I'm sorry. Whoa. We went from the Holocaust and what's happening in Israel and Palestine to comparing that to the struggles of indigenous and black people in the United States. Those are not equivalent, and it's directly a false equivalence, which is the exact issue when we start messing with the definition of what violence is. There is no active reason right now for black or indigenous people to mount a violent revolution against the United States government or any United States institution. But when you draw the false equivalence to what has happened historically or what is currently happening now and say that they deserve the right to respond in kind with violence, that is what you're calling for. It's why when, what happened on October 7th happened, we saw BLM here put out a poster of the Hamas paragliders and say, BLM needs to respond in kind here in the United States, and we need to emulate what is happening over in the Middle East. That is a very dangerous false equivalence. And Destiny ended up calling her out on that as after she said it. That was also cut. Although I do think he does get to make the point in here somewhere.
I put agree because I don't strongly agree with it because I'm all about nonviolence in my life. What I practice, my spirituality, I'm all about nonviolence. But at the same time, as I organize and I'm on the ground and I'm at protests and I'm at demonstrations, by any means necessary means, right, quoting Malcolm X, that you have to have some form of disagreement with the state that's not listening to your needs as people, as free people. And sometimes that takes, rebellious actions like burning down banks or burning down institutions that are not listening to you. But as Black people in America, if we're only demanding liberty and justice, we're not asking for revenge, we're just asking for equality. And sometimes I think the state looks at us being resistant as violence.
Sure, yeah.
You see what's happening with the language there, right? Again, false equivalence, right? And they're saying that now you should be able to burn down banks and burn down institutions so long as they're not listening to you, right? Who gets to define not listening to you? Imagine a conservative saying, well, right now the media, which is a really big, institution in the United States, is controlled by the political left. Let's burn it down. Right now, a lot of the banking institutions are controlled by the political left. Burn them down. The government right now is controlled by the political left. Burn it down because they are not listening to us. You can't do that. You can't make that argument. And the reason that argument is so, quickly made on the left is because they really believe that they are marginalized. Foundational to their belief in leftism is the belief that they are of a marginalized status and that they are constantly oppressed. If you are constantly oppressed by acts of violence at the hands of your government and institutions, why not burn them down? Why not respond in kind with violence? Not okay. And it's just not the truth.
The reason I came over here, I was thinking more internationally. If a country is met with violence, there's really only one way to respond to that. I don't think Israel could go to Hamas and say, hey guys, can you just not do that again? When Hamas is already saying that they plan more attacks that they had on October 7th. So I think Israel has the right to defend themselves with violence.
Sure, I think so there's a couple of key things to keep in mind.
I agree with that. Now you call into question how that is done, and we would all have different, prescriptions of how the Israeli government should handle that, how the Palestinians should handle that. But yeah, if your country is attacked, you would hope that you would have the right to respond to that violent attack.
So one is, when we talk about violence in response to political ideas, we have to be really careful that we don't redefine violence to mean literally anything that we don't like. Because I've noticed that people are doing these things where there is a white supremacist violence against Black communities because of the way money is distributed with our taxes. And people will take that very academic form of violence, and it's okay, I think, to have this analysis, but they'll take that academic form of violence and they'll say, now we can kill police officers and burn down buildings, or now we can engage in arson or destroy neighborhoods.
I wish that was unpacked more, because I don't think people are, giving enough credit to how radical that belief is that Ricky shared, and that I forget what his name is, what he just shared. It's a very radical belief to think that if an act of, as Destiny calls it, academic violence is committed against you, you get to respond by burning down buildings and institutions. And it was said so casually that it sounds like a casual idea. It is not a casual idea in the slightest. And again, very nice people. Everybody who was part of this video is very nice people, but very radical ideas.
Side is misrepresented by the media. 3, 2, 1.
So I stand on agree because, of course, the right is mischaracterized by the media. The left is also mischaracterized by the media. However, who has, the most dominant control of United States media right now, in my opinion, the political left does. I can name you a ton of, left-leaning channels. For right-leaning channels, we have Fox and Newsmax and OAN, which are nowhere near as big as Fox News is. And even so, who's watching Fox? I don't think a lot of our younger demographic, even if they are conservative or have classically liberal views, are watching Fox News. I would say the media is by and large dominated by the political left, and of course they misrepresent the right. But Fox News misrepresents the left, so it is a shared ailment that our media has, and it's really distressing to watch because news is no longer news, right? You're not getting objectivity, and you're not getting, and where you are getting objectivity, you're getting it out of context. So everything is being spun and twisted and shifted to fit a certain narrative or agenda, to where I can't even, watch the news on either side anymore, or if I do, it's like you have to watch them both in tandem to figure out what the real story even is and come to your own conclusion.
Honestly, the media is controlled by the left. I really never see any positive light shine on conservatives nor the right in the media ever, unless it's right-leaning media.
And to your point, what I think is really interesting to even just look at the conservatives who are here today, it's a pretty diverse bunch of people. And when I was on the left, my characterization of conservatives was like white, heterosexual, old man, and to having moved over that space and see, oh, there's way more people who just happen to have conservative beliefs, or maybe they don't agree with some of the woke stuff that's happening right now. I think we are often mischaracterized.
I do agree that right now, ironically, it seems like the left and the farther left have more kind of corporate media control in terms of how images are displayed. So you're going to feel like if you're a conservative that you're not accurately represented, and the left maybe gets some more fair representation. But on platforms where conservatives run things, holy Christ, are people on the left completely and totally misrepresented. Like, how many times have I heard these stupid quotes from the WEF where it's like, oh, you want us to rent everything and own nothing, and you want us to eat bugs, and you're on your 57th booster shot. Today, if anybody's ever listened to Rush Limbaugh, Michael Savage, Billy Cunningham, like any of these people, these guys are not giving fair, accurate representation of the left. Their voices just tend to be more marginalized or smaller now in media because of how much corporate control kind of like bows to the woke agenda, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, but again, it's like you're gonna have to, like, let's name the platforms that are dominantly controlled by conservatives. You don't really have that many, and I do think the examples that he gives are sort of like, they're like personalities, which I guess all news has these days. It's like you're not watching the news anymore. I'm getting Rachel Maddow's take on what's happening in the news. I'm not watching, an objective piece of content anymore. I'm getting, Jesse Waters' take on what's happening in the news. So much so that now it's just like these different entities are just looking for personalities and like comedians to share the news with us because we must be entertained, right? That's how information is spread these days. Where I think misrepresentation, people will take the opportunity where they have it. I can agree there. I'm just questioning who has more opportunity to do that. And right now, I do believe that's the left. But the prompt itself is my side is misrepresented by the media. So I guess that is shared regardless of which side you're on.
I'd like to push back on that just a little bit. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. But when it comes to right-wing media, maybe platforms like the Daily Wire or PragerU, they're very open about the fact that they're conservative. Sure. A lot of the mainstream left news, they'll present their opinion as fact. But like someone like Ben Shapiro, he'll tell everyone, listen to my show, listen to Pod Save America, figure out what you think is right, and you could figure out the facts based on what we're both saying. You don't see that as much from the left.
I want to push back on that because Ben Shapiro has stated a lot of opinions as facts. Yeah. I don't think I think that there are better examples to use within the Conservative Party that are more open about being.
Okay, it's a kind of interesting thing to say. He has stated a lot of opinions as facts. Anybody who has their critical thinking hopefully intact can tell the difference between what is an opinion and what is a fact. You can recontextualize facts in order to share your opinion with them, but you can't necessarily turn an opinion into a fact, I guess. Like, you can share your opinion and people can take it as fact. That would be the fault of the person taking in that information. I don't know that Ben Shapiro has ever muddied the waters as to where he stands ideologically. And the reason I feel that way is because there are many things that I would say I disagree with Ben Shapiro on, and it's because they are his opinions and I have my opinions. I don't know that I've ever seen a conservative entity not be extremely open about the fact that they are a conservative entity. Whereas with things like CNN, ABC, MSNBC, you're getting news and you are getting a left-leaning opinion on it, but they're not coming right out and saying, this is a left-leaning news source. Whereas Fox News, I don't think you could get it confused that they are or are not conservative, if that makes sense. I know that was just a lot of babbling, but hopefully that's clear.
Opinionated, but Ben Shapiro is not.
Yeah, or Michael Knowles saying transgenderism should just be eradicated from society.
That's an opinion, though. And Michael Knowles is very clear that his show, the Michael Knowles Show, is his opinion, right? Like it's like Michael Knowles' show is not called like MK News or something that could be like confused to be, a source for objectivity. It is Michael Knowles getting on and sharing his opinion. Now, you may disagree with his opinion that transness or trans ideology should be eradicated from the United States, but he's not presenting that as, a fact. And again, anybody who has their critical thinking intact should be able to distinguish, for the most part, what is fact versus what is opinion.
So now y'all are really giving them a bullet to use against us.
It's the culture war bullshit.
Yeah, culture war
it's
bullshit,
just
yeah.
like that's what I'm so sick of between both sides, because I do think that both sides are misrepresented within media.
They went way too hard with the Bud Light thing. I'm like, let's let it go.
Especially on this topic now, I think in 2020 we all can agree every news station, besides most conservative news stations and podcasts, were posting black squares and saying that they were black people. But now, what's going on with Israel and Hamas, you see some media companies taking the silent side or firing correspondents on CNN like Mark Lamont Hill, or firing other people on MSNBC if they have a neutral stance. So I agree with you. I think it's a cultural war on both ends, right? You have some liberal apparatuses who don't agree with some things that some liberals say.
Same with the right and how they did Tucker Carlson.
Both liberal and conservative media, even if they say they're blatantly stating facts, they're failing to contextualize those facts, because a story presented with blank facts looks very different when you actually hear like the build up and like really see what's going on underneath.
Mainstream
Well, yeah, that I can agree with.
media tends to misrepresent conservatives. We all can agree on that. But what they do very well is they misrepresent liberals in a positive light. We can all remember the news anchor going, "It's a mostly peaceful rally," and there's a building burning behind him. They've misrepresented the other side, saying, "Look, this side is all sunshine and rainbows, everything's fine, pay no attention to those people being hurt in the back." And instead of actually elevating people who were advocating for peace and saying, "Please don't destroy these buildings," they focused on the destruction and everything else, but not the actual destruction. So I see both sides being completely misrepresentative, but misrepresented in different ways. The right being ignored and cast out as crazy, and the left going, "We're the shiny example of tolerance. Look at us." When underneath the surface, we see the truth.
That was a great point, and I'm amazed I'm glad that got the airtime that it got, because I think there's so many different examples that you can think of this being exactly the case. You can just rack your brain from any of the news that you've watched over the past, I don't even know, like 10 years. There's a lot of misrepresentation, and I love the point being made of misrepresentation in a positive light, that your ideas are packaged to be more positive than they actually are. It's happening all over the place. It happened with the riots that he's talking about. It's happening with things like affirmative action. It's happening with crimes that are being committed in our metropolitan areas. You name it, it's being covered in a light that is not true to the lives that we're living every single day and what we're seeing out on the streets and in our own communities.
The American dream is still alive.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
This is the last prompt. I didn't like this prompt. I'm gonna be so honest. I didn't like the prompts in this episode, and that's okay. I'll get into this. Obviously, the American dream is still alive. 100% the American dream is still alive. The very fact that we're in a video right now, like talking about our country, the issues that we have with it, how we fix it, being able to talk about the different issues that we have with our country is, I think evidence to the fact that the American dream is still alive. Does it look different? Of course, the American dream looks a lot different than the one that we read about in our history books when we were children. But that's what time does. Time changes things. It alters what dreams look like. Look at the amount of people currently at our southern border in the United States of America that are clamoring to get into the United States. Is it because they're stupid? And that they don't know that they're actually entering some racist, bigoted, homophobic, no upward mobility nation? No, it's because they know the opportunities that are awarded for them here in the United States, which is why we have the problem that we have. And you know, while other countries are experiencing maybe similar issues, nothing to the degree of what the United States is dealing with right now. And there is a reason for that. We always say on this show, when people in other countries are protesting their governments, a lot of the times the through line that you will see is the call for American ideas and principles to be implemented in their countries. I always bring up Cuba, who, you know, recently had protests taking place, and instead of waving the Cuban flag, they were waving the American flag. And we, of course, have a very interesting and a special relationship with the nation that is Cuba. But there's a reason that the American flag is being waved. Whether or not you agree that we're implementing the principles that we set out to as a nation, I think we can agree that those principles hold a lot of value. And the fact that we're arguing over how to properly implement them means that we were on the right track when this nation was created, and when our founders wrote the ideas for what they dreamed America to be, when they put those down on paper.
I feel like when upward class mobility is so hard as it is right now, the American dream is it's either dead or it's on life support, because it's just damn near impossible for people to climb out of poverty.
Is it?
Everyone thinks that they're going to be the next Jeff Bezos. You're closer to being on Skid Row than you're ever going to be to Jeff Bezos.
Who thinks that they're going to be the next Jeff Bezos? I mean, like, I want to talk. I think we're confusing, like, wanting to be of like a stable and secure income, or maybe even wanting to be rich with being Jeff Bezos. Of course, if like we're going to do a numbers game, if you're, you know, like making $50K a year in the United States of America, you're closer to being impoverished than you are to being Jeff Bezos. Those are not, you know, two things that we can compare to one another in making a sound argument. You would want to say, like, how close are you to being, you know, stable or being middle class when compared to being impoverished. And even so, this idea that there's like no upward mobility and no matter how hard you work, you can't get anywhere in this country, I don't believe it. I do think there are certain issues that we're going to face. Like when I think about buying a house in the United States, I feel like that is increasingly getting more and more difficult. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We can talk about wages, and we can talk about class. We can talk about corporations buying up all the properties in the United States of America and inflating the prices. There's a ton of different things that we could improve on. But I don't think that means that there's like no upward mobility, and that if you're impoverished, no matter how hard you work, you're not going to get anywhere, and that the American dream is dead.
I think the American dream has become the American memory. Like, I was thinking about this just outside of politics. Like, you know how a lot of people have nostalgia for like the past and stuff. It made me look at America, and it's like, we're not going to get back the America that we were post 9/11, when everybody was a little more unified outside of the Patriot Act and everything. We're not going to get the America where all races could get along without people saying, oh, you're culturally appropriating, you're microaggressions, all that little stuff that keeps us divided. I don't think we'll get back to the America that we grew up in. I honestly don't. Like, I want to be optimistic, but it's hard.
I guess I just don't know that that's the necessary point of the American dream. I think it shifts and it changes, and it takes on the context of the time that it's in, where we had that sort of old school nuclear family, house with the white picket fence. That's changing with technology and corporations buying up properties and things like that. But I don't think the American dream is dead. I think it's taking on a new form. I think still there is no better place to be, no better place for progress. And as you watch people in other countries, what are they influenced by? They're influenced by America. Where do they want to be? They want to be in America. So it speaks to me that the dream is very much still alive. Opportunity is very much still alive. It just looks
different. The dream or the idea?
The dream.
Okay, First of all, let's talk about, and here's something else that I wish we could have done, and so many of these prompts, is define what we mean. What does the American dream even mean anymore? Okay, because when I'm thinking of the American dream, let me tell you what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of nuclear family, mommy and daddy, and they're following gender roles, right? And they have that white picket fence with all the little kids, and mom stays home and takes care of the kids while dad goes up to work and says, honey, I'm home at the end of the day, with the pie on the windowsill. And, you know, that was the American dream that I was taught about as a kid, where you'd watch, you know, the old school cartoons and the animations of like, you can have this in America and all this stuff. Who on the left even wants that dream? So it's so interesting that the American dream is so often talked about on the left. It's like, oh, it's dead, it's been crushed, it's been killed. What dream are you referring to? Because I mean, by all characterizations, that wouldn't be something that you want in the first place. And a large part of why the traditional American dream, I think, may be changing and shifting is left-leaning ideology, and a lot of the things that left-leaning policy has allowed to happen in this country. Now, it's a shared burden between the two sides. Don't get me wrong on that. There's plenty of accountability that needs to be taken from right-leaning individuals as well. But I don't know what dream they would even be hoping for, given that it's not something that they would ever want in the first place. But maybe I'm confused. Is that your view of the American dream, Taylor?
Well, I don't know. I think you have to distill it down to its essence. And when you do that, for me, it's the American dream is simply believing that you can make a better life for yourself and for your children in the United States, that it is a land of opportunity where you can achieve that with and be rewarded for your own efforts, your own productivity, your own creativity. And you'll be free to do that unimpeded by tyranny, by the government, and by violations of your rights. And that's the basic idea of the American dream. But to your point, I think it is, because it is kind of a belief, a positive vision of something. It's something that you kind of have to enshrine and strive for. It's an ideal that's out there that motivates you to pursue and to do something. The new sort of, a lot of the new rhetoric and a lot of the new narrative that we're hearing in the culture is all about how evil and terrible a place America is, and how there's so little opportunity, and how marginalized people are so oppressed, and all this stuff. And what that cuts at the heart of the belief of that dream. It makes it more difficult to have an aspirational attitude when you think about what America means and what it represents. But America, to your point a minute ago, to the 3.8 million people who have entered the United States through the border in the last 3 years, America likely hopefully represents a land of opportunity for them. And they believe that their lot is going to be better coming into this country and betting on themselves and just having the opportunity to build a better life for themselves and their children. They believe that fundamentally, and that's what's motivating them to come here. But it's strange, and it feels like a cultural suicide to me when we know that is no longer sort of the animating ideal or the animating principle beneath our society, where we no longer believe that you'll be rewarded, where we believe that everything's so rotten to the core and evil in America, or America itself is so bad that my efforts will not be rewarded. And also, I don't want to contribute to this system that's just going to exploit more people and oppress more people. Like, that's the vision that's being cast now. And if you lose faith in that simple idea that you can make a better life for yourself and your children, then you don't really have a country or a culture anymore. And that's deeply concerning. So we can, I think it's been misconstrued, and maybe at a certain time what the product or reward of pursuing the American dream looked like was that sort of idyllic, 1950s housewife vision. And I don't think that that's necessarily what would be the reward these days of pursuing it. And we can contend with the economic reality of that it's more difficult to purchase the home now, that wages have been stagnant, and that it's just things are more expensive with inflation, and it's a more difficult economic moment in history. But the underlying principle of the matter is still still that this remains the best place, or if not one of the best places in the world to be rewarded for the fruit of your own labor and to pursue that dream of making a better life for yourself.
Yeah, and I like that you sort of said that the reward is what you want it to be. Really, you really do have the capability to chase just about anything you want to chase in this country. And people might call me Delulu for saying that. I still think it's very much true. I mean, like, you can wake up tomorrow and want to be on an entirely different path. And if that were the case, I think this would be the country to pursue that path. And I think a lot with like travel, meeting people from other countries, seeing what life is like in other countries, you start to recognize just how many options you have in the United States. A very like small test for this is like compare grocery stores from other countries to like what we have here in the United States, and where you know, philosophically might be against capitalism and consumerism. When you get here, the choice and the, you know, unlimited opportunity that you have in just that small example, I think shows you the principle of American culture and how we feel about opportunities. And if you went to a store and they didn't have what you wanted, you can create what you want. And then suddenly other people are buying it, and you are now a business owner who's creating something that you essentially dreamt up, where you just don't get that opportunity everywhere else to do that. So take that little micro example and think about that in the macro. Now, some people don't like that. Some people think it gives into like greed and selfishness and individualism, and they're fundamentally against those things. For me, I think it's pretty cool that that is an opportunity that you get. Now, somebody put, in reference to my pie example, I just want to read this funny comment. I Can Prep Too says, pie on the windowsill would have been stolen within a second, along with any bicycle or garden plant. That is my city, LOL. So yeah, maybe the American dream does look a little different, but I do think it is still very much alive.
Real quick, we did also get one more $50 super chat, which we read. I'll not double myself.
Oh, sorry.
It's all good. When it says from Scout to Bradley, when most people are average and average people make average money, nothingness wrongful with it. But it's the truth. Thanks for sharing the truth.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to be able to say that, right? But if your mindset is there's no upward mobility and I can't do anything in this country and I'm never going to go from like poverty to anything else, you know what you are guaranteeing? You are guaranteeing that that's going to happen to you, right? Mm-hmm. Even if the system is set against you, if you want to believe that and, you know, give into that mindset, you're guaranteeing that you will be impoverished for the rest of your life. Now, people do not like to hear that. And I can understand why people don't like to hear that, because they don't want to think that they are in the way of their own selves, and they think that it minimizes the issues that maybe the system has within itself. I'm sorry, but it is really the truth. And where, you know, people may say they want to be an Elon Musk or a Peter Thiel or a Jeff Bezos, baby, you don't have what it takes. If you knew the way that these billionaires' lives like worked, how much time they actually dedicate. We love to minimize the billionaire and say, well, they don't do anything. They stole somebody's idea or they bought it off of them and now they're a billionaire and they never have to work again in their life. It's just not how it works, and it's not how they work, and it's not how their minds work, and it's not the view that they have towards systems. They're not thinking like, oh, there's a barrier and I'm never going to be able to do that thing that I want to do. There's no barriers. They're just going to do it. And if they identify a problem, they're going to figure out the solution and they're going to work to make that happen. And, you know, the average person can't do that. And that's why the average person doesn't do it. And I'm sorry. Hard pill to swallow. But your mindset limits you in the things that you are capable of doing. So you got to get rid of your barriers.
And just one other thought on mindset. I think there's also this idea of sort of instant gratification and the idea of entitlement that, you know, I should just be able to, like we reacted to that girl who paid all this money to go to college and then didn't make enough money at her entry level job as soon as she got out to pay off everything and live the lifestyle that she wanted. And there's this notion that I should just be taken care of and that the system should just be able to pump out job opportunities for me to be successful and I not have to apply myself that much or have to bear much of the risk or suffer at all. I'm just entitled to this success. And that's not that's not historically the attitude that built this country, and it's not the attitude of immigrants that are coming to this country. And a lot of times, like the first generation immigrants suffer, they pinch their pennies, they work very hard, long hours, and then figure out a way to invest and make a business of their own. And oftentimes it's not profitable for a long time, but they do end up having very successful children and can pass that along. And I think going back to the homesteaders who, in like Abraham Lincoln's day, 1800s, when they're, westward expansion, like it was a hard life for Americans as they spread across the country. It's a hard life for immigrants to our major cities historically. Like I think that's lost on us in modern times, that it is not just something that comes to you, success, that it's not just, you're not entitled to it by virtue of being born in the country. You have to work for it. And that's part of what makes it great. And that's a lot we're all dealt. And one more thought is, we talk about the lack of economic mobility, but I think Tom Sowell made the point that that 1% is not a fixed entity either, and that people are constantly ascending into the top 1% of the income level and descending into it. And so we act like it's this like impenetrable barrier, but there's a lot more mobility downwards and upwards than we give credit for. So there's all kinds of nuance in this conversation, but I think the mentality is definitely a huge piece of it.
Maybe this is a better prompt than I give it credit, because I can keep yapping about this too. Also, like a part of the American dream is like you get to define what success is. It's not always a house. It's not always like something that is, money or anything like that. It can be so many different things, take so many different forms. Okay, let's keep watching.
I agree strongly with what you're saying here. That dream of being able to buy a house, having the nuclear family, being happy, that's still my view of the American dream. It is harder to attain, that's for sure. It might be dead here in California.
It's not, I can assure you.
I want to believe that the American dream can be like real. The more I've experienced life, the more I feel it is a little more on the dead side. Like, it's like this idea that we're taught when we're growing up is that you work the hardest, you're gonna get the most, right? But that's just not true. Like, and that's not the world we live in. And
I don't know that is not true. It's not just about obviously working the hardest. I think it's about like being savvy and exercising, the parts of your brain that are innovative. But I don't know. Obviously, there are going to be examples of people, that have really toughed it out and worked as hard as they can, and they haven't make it. They didn't make it. But out of the percentage of people that truly give their all every single day, I do not think that the majority of them are not rewarded for sincerely showing up, doing what needs to be done, and doing it at 110%. And what I do think most people do is they convince themselves that that's what they're doing in life. They convince themselves that they're showing up at 110% every day. But if we're honest with ourselves, we're not. We're not showing up at 110%, and that's why our lives are not reflecting 110%. And I don't want to call, maybe it is a little bit of irony here. And again, Angel is a very nice person. Enjoyed having conversations with him in this episode. It's so interesting to watch somebody who is, a biological male dressed in drag in this like very flamboyant, very cute outfit, but gets to like exercise that right here in the United States of America, where you're not awarded that opportunity in other places, and where that would not be looked kindly upon, and you would not have the opportunity for social or economic mobility having chosen that lifestyle. What a beautiful thing that you do get to choose that lifestyle here in the United States, and that right now, honestly, it's something that's almost encouraged for people to do. That's how, progressive we are as a nation, that we entertain things like this, and to have that be lost is a really interesting thing. And to have somebody who's made that choice not be able to recognize that the American dream is still very much alive in that very act is a little ironic.
I know it's a little pessimistic. As I said, like, I want to be like the poverty cycle breaker in my family, but it's like, it feels next to impossible sometimes.
How is it possible though? How is it possible that you are impoverished, but like you have this beautiful, seemingly like a handmade outfit, you're wearing like a pink wig, your makeup is fully done, you have high heels and tights and all these things. I'm not understanding like where the poverty line is, or how we're defining that if you are not capable of breaking the cycle of poverty within your own family.
I feel out of reach, but I started my adult life with $35 in my pocket, and I was a runaway because my parents locked me up. I saw them achieve the American dream of having a home and having beautiful children. I wanted that, and I worked hard. And now in my work in real estate, I see people achieving the American dream all day long. Sometimes California is a little outside of our price range. We got to go to another state. But that potential, that idea that I am free to choose to get a home, choose to get land, choose to start a business, that is still here. And I wholeheartedly believe that the American dream still rests in our hands. We just have to be strong enough to take it.
I think for individuals who immigrate to America, the American dream may still be alive and embedded within their spirit. But I think for BIPOC folk that are within America, the American dream is sort of a memory, and
So how is that possible for a seemingly way more disadvantaged group of people, a group of people that is quite literally coming to this country with nothing, some of whom are, walking for days on bare feet to get in this country? The American dream is still alive for those, but those born into this country with a family and, shelter and food and, American principles and education, the dream for them is a memory. You are functioning leagues ahead of the people who are trying to get into this country sometimes. And this is to separate those who have nefarious intentions when getting into the United States. But my goodness, to not be able to recognize the fact that you are actively living the dream that those people are walking barefoot in this country to achieve makes no sense to me whatsoever. I don't know what's going on.
It's becoming less vibrant due to the housing crisis, due to, like you said earlier, gentrification, due to the lack of education. When the American dream was first, promoted within the 1960s, Reagan, Nixon, they funneled so much money within the American economy for people to go to college and not worry about it, for people to afford a home and not worry about it, for people to get a car and not worry about it.
Be able to work a minimum wage job and support a family.
Thank you, but now, since there's so many instances of people on the top, making sure they hold that wealth, we see so many BIPOC folk in America suffering and not being able to get to that middle class, right? The American middle class is no longer here.
So
you're
speaking just from the BIPOC perspective, not American.
I'm speaking just from the BIPOC perspective.
And what perspective am I speaking from? Exactly. I don't understand. This is why you can't claim to speak on behalf of an entire group of people.
The American dream is supposed to apply to everyone. And I think that's the issue. It's when I heard you, I'm like, I think that's amazing that some people do have the access to move and stuff like that. But what do you say for those people at the bottom who are working so hard and they can't? They just
a lot of the views you have of the American dream get so politically tainted that one of the things that sucks is for the cool things that are happening in America, you can't even take credit for it anymore. I hate that I chose the most politically divisive topics, but for instance, I personally think the COVID vaccine, that was a huge success of United States innovation and capitalism. I think our guns are really cool. I think that's super awesome. You can shoot awesome firearms in the United States. I'm a proud gun owner from Nebraska. It seems like for all the things that exist that are good, we can't take credit for them anymore because all of them become so heavily politically divided that we start to have this huge doomer outlook on everything.
I think it's really hard for some people to have that optimistic outlook when there is so much in the way. I, as a disabled person, we're still forgotten about with marriage equality. We're still forgotten about when it comes to health mandates. For a lot of people who live this every day, for us, the American dream is dead, and it's been dead for a while.
I just think the fact that we're all here and clothed and fed and have water, and we're here discussing ideas and how to make this country a better place, to me, that completely signifies the American dream. We are currently living it.
That's
I'm please, what are you talking? What is being talked about? I don't understand how people you can look at your life and say, yes, I have certain disadvantages, or there's certain things that I need to work towards or progress towards, and maybe we as a nation need to do that, or as in our small communities we need to do that. That does not mean that you are not living a literal dream that people for all of human existence and all of the centuries and every single human that came before us could not have fathomed the life that you are living currently. And to not contextualize that and to think about how privileged you really are, especially from a group of people who loves to talk about privilege so often, it's so interesting to not think that you are living not just the American dream, the human dream in the life that we are currently in, that's full of innovation and progress, where we are like protected in so many ways that humans before us never had the opportunity to even dream about experiencing. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe the American dream is a very, very interesting topic, and the very fact that we're in a video talking about it just exemplifies the fact that we are all experiencing the American dream right here and now. And I think that's where the video actually closes out. Let's see.
You said like a really optimistic view, like, oh, look how far we've come, but what if that's not enough for those people right now? Like that sucks for the people living right now who don't have what they need.
That's the beauty of America. We are free to succeed or we are free to fail. It's free to do whatever you want.
I'd rather be here. I'll just say that. I'd rather be in America.
I'd rather be here. And I'm sure everybody, if they were honest with themselves, would rather be here. Any final thoughts, Taylor? I see you nodding.
No, I mean, I think that was a great way to, oh gosh, double screen. Great way to end it. It's just, hey, would you rather be here or somewhere else? And almost everyone else in that room. So it reminds me of every election. We have all these celebrities say, if the conservative candidate wins, I'm leaving, and then no one ever does. Just 'cause at the end of the day, you're voting with your feet, and what the proof's in your actions. So
no better place to be. And with that, we're going to get into your super chats, guys. Let's hear from you guys on these topics. Quite a long show today.
Yeah, thank you all for the super chats, and get them in now if you still want to. This first one today is from Pika Warps. Sounds like a Pokemon or something. Says, I wish liberals love facts and statistics as much as they think they love people. Savage.
For some that is the case, and maybe for some conservatives that's the case too. It's just, some of these things, when I look back on them, like, oh, there's so many things you wish you could have said. But again, this is not the forum, nor is it the video for that type of discussion. But at least we get to do it here.
Guilherme El Jessico says, hello again from Brazil. I hope you had... Oh, wait, I read that. That's from last... Guilherme, if you're here again, you almost got double. That was from our last show. Taylor Fan Club says, saw the new video was up while I was at work, decided to wait until this live to watch it. Looks like I made the right choice.
Yeah, we are here to go through it. Although I do hope that you guys go give love to Jubilee, because we know a lot of you wait for me to respond to these things. Hopefully give the original creator some love. Go like the video, leave a comment down below if you have not yet. We'd appreciate that. Shout out to Jubilee for having me on.
Yeah, and the link's in our description here, so
yes.
You can find it there. C2 to J says, you killed it on there. Queen emoji. Everyone did TBH as far as being respectful, even that black chick Destiny. That's like a running joke with his audience.
It
I think,
is.
right?
Everybody's calling Destiny a woman in the comments and saying, like, it's so great to see two independent black women in this video or something. So yeah, it's very much a running joke. It was a very respectful conversation, and I'm glad that was communicated through the editing, because really we all did very much get along, and it was super, super amicable.
Sutma Dude says, Amla, are the rumors true that the reason Taylor produces the show from another location is because you couldn't bear his uncontrollable flatulence?
No, I've never heard said rumors. And no, I don't think Taylor has that problem that I know of. You'll have to ask his wife if
Yeah, ask my wife about that one.
Oh, we got a $50 from Kenna.
Oh, okay. You skipping to the front of the line. You want to read it?
Yes. Kenna says, just wanted to say it's nice to see people my age with similar beliefs. Y'all are a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much, Kenna. Yeah, it is awesome. I always, I don't know why I think it's rare to have people our age that think this way when I know it's really in reality not. So I'm glad that we've been able to create this community and that you guys are finding kindred spirits here on this channel. That's awesome.
Yes, and we needed a breath of fresh air after Sutma Dude's trolling super chat. He usually trolls Amala and her fandom of the 1975, but
yes.
I don't know. Shots fired at me, I guess.
Shots fired at Taylor.
IDK Korn says, Amala, you have this concerned look on your face in these Jubilee videos when you're listening/thinking really hard on what people are saying.
It's just I have resting concern face, I think is what it is. I'm like literally thinking like, like the whole time, and I cannot hide it. That's the one thing about me. Like, if I was lying to y'all would know, because I cannot hide it on my face. So I live with that for the rest of my life. Ain't no thing.
I saw someone say Amala's looking at the ground to hide her disdain for what's being said.
No, it's genuinely just me thinking through everything that people are saying. Also, it was freezing cold, as I said at the top of this episode. So I was thinking about how cold I was as well. So keep that in mind.
Yesenia Cruz says, hello from Puerto Rico. I really enjoy your content. Even though Eileen left, you are doing an amazing job. Keep it up and come visit Puerto Rico.
Oh, thank you. You have a beautiful name, by the way. I love that name. Yeah, I'm always happy with the Jubilee videos because so many left-leaning people go, I just love that she's still compassionate and she's still nice about what she thinks, even though I disagree with her, and that just makes my heart feel good. So shout out to the lefties who still watch and listen.
Diva Dawn says, Amala, do you like this format or middle ground format better, or do they both have their pros and cons?
100% middle ground. 100% middle ground is better. Like I said, so this was I want to say 2.5 hour shoot. And imagine 2.5 hours of talking back and forth and debating and getting down to the meat of a much broader prompt, and then it all gets cut for the first thing that you said. So it's kind of like, to some extent, I'm like, okay, why do we have a 20-minute long conversation if we know we're going to get this all cut down? But of course, they want to pick and choose the points that they use, and it's better for them in that way. Middle ground, at least, you're getting at least a 45-minute episode, so you get to flesh things out a little bit more. You get to be, more pointed in the things that you say, knowing it's probably going to end up in the video.
And they do have the Patreon bonus prompt usually in their videos, but I feel like they should do a Patreon uncut version where you can just watch the entire conversation as it played out. That would be awesome.
And maybe they do. I don't know. Jubilee, get on it if you don't.
Free idea. Madeline Glidewell says, it's wild that January 6th, while absolutely wrong, is called an extreme word like insurrection. I literally saw BLM riots called expressions of grief.
Right. It's just the math is not mathing. It's not making sense. These two things are not the same, especially when we get into some of the other interesting parts of January 6th, like the Capitol Police entering and opening doors for the protesters. Anyways, neither here nor there. Let's move on.
Moving on. Eat the Cracker says, can you please do an interview with Blair White or another video with Buck Angel? Love you guys.
We do need to have both Blair and Buck back on at some point. Don't worry. These people are on our radar.
Yeah, Blair's probably our new most requested collab besides
100%,
Brett Cooper.
100%.
So Alfredo Ortiz says, Amala Taylor, pray for me. I'm going to school for my pilot certificate and I have to take a psychology class. I feel so old because I'm 26 and everyone in my class looks like high schoolers.
Oh, well, no, congratulations. I am of the belief that you can get an education at any time. My great-grandmother ended up in a situation where she had kids she had to take care of, and she needed to get educated, and she went back to college at 59 years old. So
that's awesome.
What you're doing at 26, she did at 59, and you can do it. You're going to crush it. And psychology, if I remember from taking a psychology course in college, typically pretty easy. I think it'll be smooth sailing for you.
Well, everything's easy for Amala valedictorian.
Oh, okay, whatever.
IQ 200. But,
Oh my gosh.
But no, that's awesome. And yeah, when I was in college, I had some classes with adults, full-on adults, 40s, 50s, and it's always had the most respect for them, and they took it so much more seriously. And I feel like if I went back to school now, I'd probably take it more seriously because you're there to actually learn, and not just get through it.
Right.
And yeah, my dad just finished his Master of Divinity, and it's been working on it for 5 years, and he's 64, I think. So
yeah,
never stop learning. That's really dope. 26 is
100%
very young.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Let's see. David Brennan says, I'm pretty left-leaning, but these Jubilee debates make my heart spin. They always pick the most batshit liberals possible, LOL.
Yeah,
I didn't really think so.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty reasonable for the most part. Outside of the burn down buildings and institutions type thing, that was kind of crazy to me. But I think maybe in general, maybe a lot of people do really feel that way. It's hard whenever you see your side being represented and you feel like they didn't choose the right people to do it. That's always a tough thing to deal with. So hopefully I represented for my team properly. You guys let me know.
Ed Rubin says the info YouTube adds to videos has got to be the most annoying thing. Whether correct or not, it's not their effing job.
Yeah, it's difficult. It depends because, like a lot of the third-party companies that say Meta was using for fact-checking ended up being super left-dominated. You have to really be mindful of choosing a place that tries to come at things from a non-biased perspective, and I don't think that's probably what YouTube is dealing with. There's a lot of corruption there.
Yeah, especially when they're citing like, oh, you can only use information from the CDC or WHO, and turns out that wasn't always the most honest stuff being given.
Right.
And yeah, just setting yourself up as the arbiter of truth is just never a good idea. And again, that's why I think the community notes is probably one of the better ways I've seen context added to things, because it's not one entity that can be captured by any particular ideology. It's the people.
Yep.
Okay, Ed Rubens. Oh no, I just read that one. David Brennan. I'm pretty left-leaning, but these Jubilee debates make. All right, my gosh, I read that one too. I'm like not on my game today. I'm sorry, guys.
No worries.
Madeline Glidewell. She did super chat before, but this is a new one and it's a great one. Michael Scott says, "I'm a victim of a hate crime. Stanley knows what I'm talking about." Stanley, that's not a hate crime. Michael, well, I hated it.
Well, I hated it. We love The Office here.
Time.
Yes, we do love The Office on this show. Yeah, and now y'all know I can't stand the idea of hate crimes or hate speech. And let me know if you feel the same in the comments down below. I do think it's just so dumb. I'm sorry.
Yeah, who doesn't hate hate crimes? She hates the idea of hate crimes.
Yeah, I hate that people. It sounds funny because it sounds like it's saying I hate that people are going away for hate crimes, but that's not what I mean. A crime is a crime. Doesn't matter what it was motivated by. You could pretty much argue that probably a large portion of crimes are motivated by hate, even though they may not be hate towards a specific protected class. Oh, gosh. It's just ridiculous, guys. It makes me angry, actually.
Yeah, it's like ascribing intent and making a judgment based on that ascribing of intent, and that just seems like generally beyond the scope of
the
law.
It's not your job. Just punish them for the crime and move on. It's not your job.
BAWZ, I think it's our obligation to listen to even the most radical of ideas. How can we dismantle toxic ideologies if we can't even break them down?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily your obligation to listen to them, but it is their right to be able to share them, if that makes sense. Like on Twitter, you're not obligated to listen to somebody who personally identifies as a neo-Nazi, but if they should have the right to share their beliefs if that's what they want to do, and so long as they're not, calling for violence towards somebody or yelling fire in a crowded theater. And as long as we get to exercise those two, differing aspects of speech and listening, then everybody should be okay. You would think.
You would think. Pitland44 really enjoyed your video about the Pakistani lady taking over Star Wars. Weird question. Why has no one noticed that the interview with her and Jon Stewart was at the World Economic Forum?
Oh, you know what? You pointed out something very important. We should have talked about that on the show. I actually need to delve into that. I want to see why exactly she was there. She was probably invited as like a feminist activist to have that discussion. It seemed to be a very woman-driven interview. But good point. Thank you for pointing that out.
But Destiny would accuse us of not picking and cherry picking.
Right, misrepresenting the WEF, even though if you go on their site, it does say those things. So it's like they're misrepresenting themselves then.
You will own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
Ed Rubin, why do so many people say, I feel like, ? Do they not think or believe anything? Is that their get out of jail free Monopoly card?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of taken on, I think, and I believe have taken on different shapes and forms, and maybe I feel is one of those. I think I say I feel sometimes.
You think you say you feel?
I think I say I feel.
I feel like I think that I say.
I believe sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're little rhetorical ticks that we have to feel like we're softening our statements. And I read stuff on Twitter sometimes, like comes on my feed. It's like, this year you need to eliminate the words I think or I believe from your email writing and don't say them ever. And just say what you say and stand by your statements and don't couch it in this hesitancy. You'll come off better and stronger. And I think there's truth to that. I think there's truth to that.
I think there's truth to that. I think, and you could argue maybe that I feel is not something to be used unless you are following that with an emotion. You would say, I feel sad, I feel blank. That makes sense. But I think and I believe do serve purposes, and they do mean something rhetorically. Right. Like I believe means that you have some sort of evidence backing the thing that you are about to say. I think means that you are using your brain to ponder something. So they actually do serve purposes.
It's true. I guess whether you're using it to weaken what you're saying or using it to make more clear what you're saying.
Right.
And I guess the intent that matters.
Right.
Anyways, good super chat. Alfredo Ortiz says, responding to Amala in the Jubilee video, hey Amala, it's Alfredo. We love you, but Amala don't love you because she skipped you. What happened to self-love?
Wait, what? I don't understand.
I'm a little confused too.
Did I skip something?
Hey Amala, it's Alfredo. We love you, but Amala don't love you because she skipped you. What happened to self-love?
Oh, is it because I skipped the ad?
Yourself?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, I saw somebody commenting, a ton of you were commenting on Jubilee that like, oh, it's so funny that they had Amala do the promo for, subscribing to Jubilee because we know damn well she's going to skip it when she does her live. And you know me well. I did have to skip that part of the Jubilee videos. I can't help it.
Olivia says, hi guys, bit late to this live today, but I was asleep and then somehow realized I was missing the live. I recently joined as a Patreon. Keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you so much for becoming a patron. We greatly appreciate you. You guys really do help fuel the work that we do. So if you are interested in becoming a patron at any point, the link is always in the description. And I'm glad that you're... I don't know if I'm glad that your mind woke you up out of slumber to let you know that this live was happening.
She's in Australia too, so I don't know what time it is there.
I don't know what time it is there either. I'm thinking, is it early morning there? Oh.
Yeah, it's got to be
early morning the next day. I think it's early morning the next day.
Tuesday.
I don't know how I feel about having that power over waking you up, but we're glad you're here.
RP Awareness Year says, hey there, gang. I got here a little late, so here's some advice, mi gente. Don't simp over Amala, level up kings, get into shape, become better, love the show.
I guess that's good advice. I guess, yeah. Level up, become better, and don't simp for me, I guess, yeah. I'll take it.
We'll take it. Celtic Blacksmith says, hold up, just wait one damn minute. You mean to tell me Amala is not an old hetero rich white guy? Why didn't anybody tell me this?
I know a lot of you thought that, but in this video, I've come out as a biracial female, actually. So it's good news, guys.
Ed Rubin says, the American dream seen from the outside is totally different from what is seen from the inside, referring specifically to the newer generation.
Yeah, definitely. That's why being able to view something from different vantage points is a really powerful tool and something that we should work harder to do, to be able to step into other people's perspectives, because it really does shift our own views of our lives and of the American dream and things of that nature. And that seems to be what's missing. As much as left-leaning people say that they are constantly trying to look at life from other people's perspectives or like their marginalized status, a lot is lost in their sort of foundational viewpoint of oppression and marginalized status.
RJ7 Adventure Ready says, hey, Amala, love the nails. Hope this pays for at least one rhinestone. And well, also, when is the next Devil's Advocate?
Thank
Wow,
you.
that's an OG.
Thank you. Let me think. Devil's Advocate. We haven't even discussed doing another one of those. To be honest, they didn't perform all that well when we posted them, but I'm glad that there are some fans of the Devil's Advocate series where I sort of play a leftist with somebody on the right on any given topic. Maybe we'll have to bring it back. Maybe we will. Maybe we can do Devil's Advocate with Blair White. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun format. We still have to figure out our fun creative plans for this year. We've just been trying to get established independently the last few months, and I feel like we're hitting our stride. So it's time to start brainstorming.
It is.
So we're hear you. If you guys have any ideas or things you want to see, let us know in the chat, on Patreon, etc. When we'll be open to your ideas.
Yep.
Loretta Jean says, Amla and Taylor, what resource do you think the American people could use to properly educate themselves on both sides and decide which party, if any, they lean towards?
That's a difficult question.
Besides this channel?
Yeah. Besides our YouTube channel. I don't know. I think it's all about taking information from a ton of different sources. As I said, like if a story comes out and I feel any amount of like confusion about the facts of the matter or people's different interpretations, I'll just look at a ton of different people talking about the same thing. And with the internet, we are both blessed and cursed with the fact that millions of people will give us their opinion on any given thing that happens. So that's me. I would say just taking in multiple sources is really important, and then comparing them to one another.
Yep. And then otherwise, just watch us and you'll be fine.
Exactly.
Eric Brown says, here's your sponsorship money for the Stanley Cup I bought. Thanks to your last live.
Hilarious.
That should go to me then.
Yeah, it really should.
Amla's a hater.
Yeah, Taylor was the one who was repping the Stanley Cup, so we'll make sure that makes it over to Taylor.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, that's such a great. I sent Amla this little, you know how people share like these little stories on Facebook, and there was like this one that came across my feed that talked about the marketing genius of Stanley and how they had pitiful revenue several years ago, and then their new marketing persons decided to market toward women because they were just marketing toward like industrial workers and things like that, and apparently that was a genius stroke of genius, and it took off.
Yeah,
it helps explain the insanity that we're living in these days. One more from RP Awareness. Amla, I have to disagree with your take on the U.S. dream. It's very hard to get a house, make enough to get a wife and family, not need a second job. My imagination is the only place where this dream exists.
I don't think I don't think I've ever insinuated that it's not becoming more and more difficult. I think there's many cases to be made that many parts of the American dream are becoming a lot more difficult. The dating scene right now is sort of tough when it comes to finding your significant other. Corporations are buying up all these houses. It's tough to be a young person right now and think that you're ever going to own, that like 2-story house or whatever. But I don't think it's completely out of reach. That's the thing. I think a lot of people get really doom and gloom when it comes to the American dream and are not necessarily looking for the silver lining. There's always going to be certain aspects of life that become, more difficult or less difficult as time goes on and things progress. But I think it's still very much within reach, and even so for some with one job too.
Chelsea M says, you make me excited to start my own show. I'm a former adult star turned conservative mom of 3 on my way to law school. It spins heads on both sides. I couldn't do that anywhere besides America. The dream is still 100% alive.
Wow. I imagine you have a wild story to share. I would love to see that show. Go for it. That is an amazing thing. Yeah. They're really, of course, there are other places where you have the ability to like try new things and switch up your life and pursue different things as they come to you. But really, I don't know that there's any place that truly you have the just ability to let your imagination run wild and do whatever it is that you want to do.
RJ7 again says, I also think people are putting a lot of emphasis on materialism. What about just having freedom of choice?
It's a big thing. Yeah, that's a part of the conversation that we didn't really get into. A lot of the dream conversation was around like ownership of things or how much money you have or this sort of contrived vision of success and what that looks like. And while yes, I think like it's great to have money, it's great to have a house, it's great to own property, and all of these things, at the end of life, when we get there, and hopefully we get there in old age, I don't think those are the things that you're like looking back on and thinking like, oh, that's the thing that really made my life. I think, you know, it's family, it's community, it's friendship, it's learning, it's experience. There's just all these different things that we'll look back on that are going to be far more important to us than anything material.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like there's research on happiness. I think John Haidt talks about it in the Happiness Hypothesis book. But there's basically diminishing returns that like once you don't want for food and shelter and basic needs, there's diminishing returns on the amount of happiness you get in exchange for more money. Now, obviously, having more money will empower you to have more options and do things, but it can also become quickly something that maybe becomes a barrier to your relationships or whatever else. And I think that at a certain point, once your needs are met, you can have all the happiness in the world, and more money can maybe certainly help that. But we also see like, you know, those stereotypical stories of people who win the lottery and then just like go bankrupt and destroy their lives and relationships. So definitely more to it than materialism. Good point. It's T says, I didn't even realize that I was slowly absorbing far left ideology in college, and then I was slowly falling into red pill ideology. I caught myself, and now I'm comfortably center. It's easy to go with the flow as you want to fit in, even if it's not a conscious decision.
Yeah, 100%. Our subconscious is super powerful and super malleable. I find myself sometimes like I'll be scrolling on TikTok watching stuff and I'll be like, that just gave me an opinion that I did not have prior to watching that video, and it could really change your outlook on the world. And just to give a small example on this, let's say you go on TikTok or Instagram or whatever and you find a movie review and somebody's saying, you know, I just watched Saltburn and it was the most horrific, disgusting movie I've ever seen. Subconsciously, you will start to make that characterization for yourself simply because somebody told you to feel that way, and it will start to affect your life out in the real world, unless you are like obviously super tuned in and able to clue in on when these feelings start to escape from the screen into your mind. Same thing goes for college. Same thing goes for like the values shared within your family. You kind of like, it's kind of like a you are what you eat type of thing. And sometimes people don't package the things to you as leftist ideology, and then you end up with them. Same thing. Same goes for the red pill example that you gave.
Velaris says, Europeans don't want to move to the US. There really aren't more opportunities. Americans are often too self-involved. You are not the best in everything.
I think the numbers would beg to differ on the amount of people that are going here. And I have spent some time in Europe, probably Taylor more than me. And it's not to say that these countries are not great and that like there's not ample opportunity there. It's just to say that for me, when making the comparison, I'd much rather be in the US of A. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard like it's hard to draw comparisons because if you're only looking at like, you know, gross domestic product or average income or things like that, then some of the European countries that are smaller and more monolithic and some of which have very prosperous specific industries or things like that can skew the numbers in their favor. But there's also elements of like in the UK, for example, I've heard people complain about a lot of like classism that is in France as well. It's like sort of a legacy of the having nobility throughout history and all of that. And there's sort of like this almost subconscious level of like resistance when you're trying to be upwardly mobile and entrepreneurial, that the powers that be, or even this like invisible cultural force is kind of keeping you down from that. And whereas like in the US, the very essence of it was, hey, let's create this nation that's a place of freedom where you can, you know, have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and all these things. And like, it's that sort of frontier entrepreneurial sort of essence that I think anybody can share in if they believe in that and want to bet on themselves and want to try to, you know, bet on their own competence and their own work and try to better themselves. But obviously, I think somebody who's living in Europe, there's obviously a great standard of living in a lot of European countries. Yeah. And it's not to say you can't be entrepreneurial in Europe and be successful. But I think with when we're talking about the American dream specifically, that is, I think, something pretty American.
Yeah, and there's no hard and fast rule. I think there's a ton of Europeans that want to be in America. There's a ton of Americans who want to be in Europe. It's just like different strokes for different folks type of thing. By no means is like the American way of life the way of life for all people and the best option for, you know, all involved and all alive. It's just to say, when I think of my personal preferences, I prefer here.
Yeah, to be fair, like, yeah, in France, like they have a great social, system where you can take off months of the year and you don't have to work as long a time, and you have great public benefits and stuff. But I'm sure there's trade-offs with that as well.
Dude, I was there in August once, and I'm like, okay, why is literally nothing happening? Nothing's open. Nobody's here. Nothing's going on. And they're just like, oh yeah, we just take August is just like an open month basically for everybody here.
All flying south for winter, for summer, I guess. They're vacationing in the south. Yeah.
Right. So, nothing open. Nobody's doing
anything. To each their own, Charlize their own. I think we say that a lot on this channel.
Exactly.
But I'm glad I'm here in rootin' tootin' US of A.
Yeah, buddy.
America. BAWS says, Boz, I don't know how to say that, says they should tell the millions living in Myanmar, North Korea, and much of the Middle East, etc., that the American dream isn't real.
Right. Yeah. It's all relative, right? And I think you can create a strong sense of entitlement and maybe disconnection from other people when you just don't have like a bird's eye view of life. And that's not to say we should always look at people and go, well, somebody has it worse than you and they love the life that you have because you're currently living the dream. I understand that that's not always what you want to hear, especially when you're trying to tackle problems that you are facing in your own life. It's just to say, it's not as doom and gloom as I think it's being characterized as. And you do need a little bit of relative perspective, especially if you're going to make statements like the American dream is dead.
Guilherme Gisico, tell me if I'm saying that right. You have a tough last name. Says, here in Brazil, we have these left-wing artists who say if someone on the right wins, they will leave here, but they will always go to the USA or Europe.
Yeah, I've met some Brazilian students once at a conference that said that a lot of what we face in the U.S. is very similar or takes like a similar but different form in Brazil, and that it's a lot of the same rhetoric. And I think it's just a shared experience amongst a lot of different places these days. It's just so interesting to hear people in, thousands of miles away dealing with the exact same things we deal with.
Ronald Batista says, I'm gay, and I thank you guys for helping me begin to question my beliefs and become more of a free thinker. # favorite parasocial relationship.
Oh, that's so funny. We started something with a parasocial conversation. You know what? I love that for you. Being gay does not mean that you have to have a certain set of beliefs. In fact, it doesn't mean much at all, other than it tells me who you're going to date and who you're interested in. That's literally it. So the fact that people try to tell you that it should mean anything more than that is ridiculous. So I'm glad you're a free thinker.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I kind of chuckled because it just caught me off guard. Like you just led right out the gate with I'm gay. Okay, yeah.
Love it.
Thanks for being here, though.
Yeah.
Glad to know you're a free thinker. That's what's more important to us.
Yes.
Monica Leah says, Happy New Year. I'm here for the first time this year.
Oh, nice. Okay. And what day is it? It's January. Oh, gosh. All my days mixed up. January 8th. We're happy to have you on the 8th day of 2024.
But also, where you been? I'm just kidding. Exactly. We know Monica Leah. She's from Finland and a regular super chatter.
Oh, shoot. Okay, Taylor, with the memory.
Past, but glad to know you're here.
Okay. You really remember that. Wow, I didn't remember that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess I see these names all the time. But
yes.
Mountain Goddess says, you know what makes a huge impact? Successful people who did the work and not wallow in self-pity from circumstances, whether it be background growing up or skin tint. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, it's like we can see, of course, there's room to sit and talk about problems and barriers and things that are hard or whatever. But I'm telling you, the people who are successful are not doing that. They look at the lot that they have in life and they go, okay, I'm going to gonna beat whatever I've got to deal with. I'm gonna beat the odds.
Taylor Fan Club says, I think liberals think the American dream is dead because this is the only life they've ever known. Because of that, they think all the luxuries and privileges are an entitlement.
Yeah, and they just they do a lot of like utopian dreaming. If you do a lot of utopian dreaming, of course your life is going to be like the worst ever because utopias don't exist. So, I mean, if you're constantly longing for something that does not and cannot exist, then yeah, your life is always going to look horrible, no matter how much fulfillment you get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like you can either be oriented towards looking for opportunities and ways to advance yourself, or you can be oriented towards looking for reasons to blame why you are a victim or why you can't move or that justify your inaction or what you're entitled to. And it's very clear which one someone is.
And I say this as somebody who's done it and did it for a very long time. So like nobody's like safe from that style of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Maui says, my parents were teen parents. My dad is Samoan and my mom is white. They both worked hard to be out of poverty. My dad graduated as an engineer. It's an insult to say BIPOC can't live the American dream.
100%. It's so limiting. It's degrading in a way to have that view of a group of people purely based on their skin color, even though they think it's like a tolerant thing to be saying and thinking. And congratulations to your parents for doing what they did and taking, a difficult route and making it out on the other end. That is awesome.
Chicken Pork Adobo says, a poor immigrant will be more successful than these self-victimized lefties. I'm glad you didn't sound nervous in this Jubilee video. Love you, Amala.
Thank you. To me, whenever I hear myself, I sound nervous no matter what because I'm just not in my element. So I'm glad it wasn't communicated through the video. Yeah, no. People who work really hard to be in this country have the mindset that like once they get here, they're going to utilize the opportunity of having been in this country. And that's why you see a lot of success from immigrants and immigrant families. I myself am the daughter of a Nigerian immigrant, and Nigerians do really well in the United States of America. And mindset is, I think, a large part of that because we don't look any different to any other Black American who is, running around, and some of them are making a lot of excuses based on the way that they look, but can't justify the fact that Nigerian immigrants do so well in this country in the first place.
Do I get to say I'm the great grandson of a Norwegian immigrant? Does that give me anything?
If you want it to, Taylor, it does.
If I wanted to?
Yeah, I think so. There's something to be said.
Am I technically an immigrant?
There's something to be said for everybody's family history, I think.
Yeah, I mean, technically, if you go back far enough, pretty much every American's an immigrant, right?
Yeah.
And besides natives.
There you go. Yeah, it's just how far out.
Alex Bell says, hey, Amala, Alex from the Jubilee video, just hopping on to say it was a pleasure working with you that day. Hope to have the pleasure again.
Thank you, Alex. You were so nice. And it's so funny because Alex actually followed the rule of like, we're not supposed to talk to each other in the little waiting room. And we were all like not being good about that, which is kind of rude, but we were all being nice to each other. I digress. So I was like waiting. I was like, oh, I wonder what Alex is going to say once we actually get out there. And he held it down. It was just so nice and like calm. So shout out to Alex.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Diva Dawn says, I'm mildly annoyed by the chick who said she's disabled and oppressed. Excuse me? I'm 80% service connected and get a check every month. If anything, we're protected, not oppressed.
Yeah, we didn't get to really like unpack anything there, especially when it came to like marriage equality. I was very confused about the point of her being disabled and not affecting her marriage equality, which I'm sure there must be something to it because it's a wild thing to say.
You mean no one asked?
Yeah, I'm like,
no one wanted to unbox that.
You're like, that's a huge can of worms that we know is not going to make it into the video. So we'll unpack that at a later date. Yeah, that whole thing left me befuddled. We'll use that word. How's that?
It's a great word. Raised by Wolves says, this is the land of opportunity, not handouts. No one owes you anything just because you came, tried, and maybe didn't make it to where you want to be.
I mean, and luckily for them, it is the land of handouts too, currently. So, like, you can get both in this country. Are you kidding me? We got, you know, like, illegal immigrants coming in here and just getting, like, flights and hotels and stuff. We are in the land of opportunity and handouts. So,
oh my goodness.
You really get to make a choice there on that front.
A scout in the Bradley says, to make money in America is hard and easy. You have to be willing to risk everything. You have to be smart and hardworking. Hard work by itself is not enough. And lots of luck. I have lost, but have won. Yeah,
that risk is really an important point. So thank you for bringing that up. There's not, interestingly enough, this is, I guess, it could be seen as a blessing and a curse. I don't think there's any country where you can like risk as much as you can here in the United States. And with high risk, can come high reward. It can also come a high rate of failure, but you really can like give your all in this country. I think some people don't want to A, take the risk, or B, do something that they feel like is beneath them. And that's a big part of upward mobility, whether we like it or not. It's just the truth.
Yeah, and he mentions too, like hard work by itself is not enough. And you do hear people complain, like I think that girl in the video said a minimum wage job should be able to let you, you know, sustain a whole family or it's provide for a full family. And it's not really what minimum wage jobs are made for. They're more made for like part-time college students and things like that. I mean, and just being willing to work more hours. I mean, that's sometimes maybe that's needed, but over the long haul, you should not be stuck in a dead end and you should be trying to advance yourself. And whether that's getting a manager job at your fast food restaurant or getting educated and you know, climbing the ladder by one way or another. If you can make excuses for why not and why that's so difficult, or you can just, you know, do everything in your power to not only work hard, but work smart. And I think that is an important point that you know, just banging your head against the wall won't necessarily get it done. You have to have competence to kind of climb the ladder a little bit. And if you do, that will be rewarded by and large. And there's always examples of failures and people who didn't make it, etc. But I think, I don't know, that's more the exception to the rule, if you're being honest.
Yeah, so. I'm just like, so many people will say like, what about those working like 2, 3, 4 jobs? It's like, okay, yeah, I have the utmost sympathy for the people who are like really, really hustling, working 2, 3 jobs. But I'm just like, is that you though? Because you're also claiming to like be impoverished or whatever, like the Angel, the guy saying that he wants to break the cycle of poverty within his family, the one who was in drag. Are you though? Like what are you doing right now to break the cycle of poverty in your family? I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to assume. I'm just asking the question.
Which is fair to ask. Anyways, Dr. Gold said, I am 20 and I'm a 20-year-old doctor. Wow, impressive. And thank you for fighting for this country by being patriot.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
you embody the American dream to Dr. Gold.
Thank you, Dr. Gold.
Celtic Blacksmith says, speaking of gold, says, I keep my pockets full of glitter to sprinkle around if I ever do commit a crime. So it's a love crime. But to each their own from Greece to Rome or whatever.
Right. Isn't that the truth? Right. Yeah, don't worry. I committed the crime, but I didn't do it out of hate, guys. I need to make a whole video about this now that I'm thinking about hate crimes. Nobody's going to watch it, but I need to rant about it.
I don't believe in hate crimes.
I don't believe in hate crimes.
Taylor Fan Club, one more, says, example for what I said, Cali's new reparations lists $4.5 million for each person being able to change their name for free African-American language classes, whatever that means, 40 acres, etc.
Right. And I'm like, I don't think that's actually going to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, they'll call that an act of violence.
You just can't win.
I'm tired, guys.
A couple more here. Monica Leah says, what are your thoughts on GTA 6? It will be released next year, but people say it's woke.
I don't know. I've never played Grand Theft Auto or nor do I have any experience with the game. But honestly, I'm not too worried about a video game that I believe was like already featuring like prostitutes and strippers where you run people over and get points for like robbing people and stuff. Isn't that what Grand Theft Auto is? So like, I'm not worried about like the moral integrity of a video game. like that.
Yeah, I played Grand Theft Auto 1, 2, 3, I think San Andreas. I think I fell off after that, which those are all the super old ones. I never played the 5, and I've seen stuff that the 6 like has you pick your pronouns as you're starting out and creating your character, and I think that's pretty much standard practice by now. It is crazy to me that like video games used to be like the bro domain, and I feel like now like I play Halo. That's like my only game I still play pretty much, and like every Pride month they have like a new Master Chief Pride helmet or something to put on, and it's always like the certain Disability Awareness Month and Native American Awareness Day badge, and I'm like, does the actual target demographic for this game care about any of this stuff? Is this really, or is this just people sitting in a studio in California being like, we need to put this in there to change these people and engineer the reality that we want?
It's
weird. No one asked for this, so it's tragic.
Yeah.
That the gaming industry seems to be captured by this woke stuff.
I'd be more worried if it was a more wholesome game. You can't be like, I beat up the stripper, but she asked me for my pronouns first.
Yeah.
And that would be a hate crime anyways. So there you go. Full circle, guys.
Depending on if it was a BIPOC stripper.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, you can only beat up the white people now. Someone needs to make like a GTA 6 woke skit, where like you can only like attack white people and burn police stations and everything. But
that would be hilarious.
Can't burn down. I guess you can burn down black people's stores if you're a black person protesting Black Lives Matter. Hey-o. But anyways.
Yeah.
Last one I see for today. Julian Giangrande says, I wouldn't take any advice from Destiny. Oh, a couple more came in, but thoughts on that one?
I don't know. I'm never going to, I don't think I'll ever say, or maybe I have on this show, you guys can fact check me on that. There's no specific like person or group of people that I say I wouldn't take advice from. Advice is advice, and good advice is good advice regardless of where it comes from, if that makes sense. It's the same thing with like criticism. If somebody deserves to be criticized, they deserve to be criticized. It doesn't really matter who they are. And the same can be said from taking advice from somebody. If Destiny gives me good advice, I'll take good advice. I'm sure he would actually have a lot to share. He's got a pretty, successful business. He's showing up in all these different videos. People really seem to like him and know him well. So I'm sure there's many areas in life that he might be pretty sensible and maybe be a good resource.
There's a meme of that. It's like a balding white guy, and it's just a picture of his face like this. And it says, tragedy. The worst person you know just said something true or something like that. And it's true though, like the worst person that you know can say true things or say wise things, and it doesn't make them any less true or wise.
Yeah.
So it's generally, as a rule, it's good to approach conversations as though you can learn something from the other person.
100%.
But also a healthy degree of skepticism with people who have, a demonstrated past of bad faith or something like that is also in order. Okay, I think this is our last one. Raised by Wolves says, what I meant in my previous chat was more toward the guy who talked about people who come and try and still don't make it. No one is owed a compensation just for trying.
Yes, that's fair. Well, yes, I have to think about that. So many of these things, I know they're meant as like very like passing comments, but I do have to think about if anybody is like, generally, yes, I agree. Generally, yes, I do agree. There's a deep sense of entitlement in our view towards what we are owed or what we deserve simply by being humans or like being born in the position that we're in right now. And I do think we need to think about that a little bit more and ask ourselves, are we truly owed anything? And if we are, to what degree are we owed something just for living? And your answer might shock you. Some people think we're owed everything just for living and that we should have all of our needs met, whatever those needs may be. And then I take a more like a bare bones view, philosophically, that you're technically not owed anything just by being here. And the stuff that we have come to view as being owed is largely human created. And these are just ideas that have flourished. And here we are to discuss them. Anyways, guys, that's our last super chat.
It is.
Interesting note to leave the show on. Yeah. Maybe a question that you guys can ask yourself. What do you think you're owed as a human living on this rock that we're all, chilling and hanging out on and talking on podcasts on? What a weird thing to be doing. Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below on your thoughts on the different prompts that we've discussed. As always, I encourage healthy debate, so duke it out, but do so respectfully as we managed to do in this Jubilee Spectrum video that we reacted to today. I always love to hear from you guys and hear your thoughts, so drop them down below after the show. If you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we're live. That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Plus, we post videos for you guys every single other day. Tomorrow's video is going to be, surprisingly, another Jubilee video. I apologize. We really love Jubilee, but this one is 6 guys and 1 secret girl. We're gonna see if, we can fly under the radar. If I can fly under the radar as a woman pretending to be a man. I don't think I'm that capable, but you guys will let me know tomorrow when you see the video. Guys, thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.